And skies are blue once again. Let the bygones go bye-bye.
From the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, and here's our headlines. A truck driver shoots an upright canine near Reed City, Michigan. This report just came in at phantomsandmonsters.com. The story is as follows, as told by the nephew of the truck driver. He is a long-haul truck driver and was stopped on the side of the highway in a heavily wooded area. This was somewhere several miles in the middle of nowhere, but he said he was closest to Reed City, Michigan. I can't recall what he said he was doing, but he had to fix something before he could take off again. Also, he did not have a trailer on at the time. He had just got done fixing up his stuff and was about to climb back into the vehicle when he saw a deer come towards him from the tree line. He said it looked like it might have been running from something. He assumed it might have been a bear. He was just getting ready to leave when he suddenly sees something looking at him through the passenger side window. He described it as having jet black fur and bright yellow eyes, as well as a vicious-looking, snarling teeth. It was so close to him that he could see the fur blowing with the slight breeze that was coming through. The window was open, but it didn't seem to notice, as was evident when the creature put its paw up to the window as if to press on it against the window. But it pulled back in shock when it realized its paw actually entered the vehicle. My uncle typically carries a gun on him. At this time, he had a heavy revolver. He pointed it at the dogman and pulled the trigger, effectively shooting it directly in the face. Finally, the truck started moving fast enough for him to be confident that the thing wasn't following him in case it survived the shot. He didn't bother waiting around to find out. He said he still gets disturbed when he thinks back onto that event. He described it as giving off this aura of pure evil and intellect in only the few seconds that he faced it. He has nightmares about the creature to this day, and he refused to tell anyone about it until several years after it had happened, for fear of people thinking that he had lost his mind. Another reason I'm able to believe this story is that he's not interested in the occult, supernatural, paranormal, or cryptids, etc. He had no idea what to make of this thing. I told him to look into the Dogman. When he looked online, he said the artist's descriptions of the Dogman matched perfectly for what he saw that day. Again, posted at phantomsandmonsters.com. And so speaking of cryptids, that takes us nicely into this edition's Fun Fact. Madagascar was once the stopping ground for lemurs, but they happen to be the size of gorillas today. And that wraps it up for this edition of the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS Idris.
Contact, nice spirit orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the finished. Still far outstripped our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Welcome back. The weekend went fast, but it is Monday night, July 29th, on into the 30th. And tonight we're going to welcome back author, researcher, historian, speaker, Bruce Fenton, back to Lighting the Void, and I am stoked. Bruce is one of those researchers that I feel, he's got a great amount of integrity and knowledge, and it's kind of, to me, healing to those of us that are kind of tired of the same old stuff and assumptions, and we want to really dig into alternative history and this idea of ancient aliens and the Exodus and where did we come from and human origins. And so the stuff gets pretty extensive, and it's also kind of cool to find out what we actually don't know. Then we do make a lot of assumptions, so it's really cool to have Bruce back. Now, this show is brought to you by GetTheT.com. Make sure you go sign up for the webinar. The new one's August 12th. We had some kind of tech hiccup today where nobody got the emails. I don't know why. Nobody got the reminder emails, and I find that typically if they don't get them, they don't show up. So the last one, we had a ton of people. This time, not so many. So make sure you go to Get the T. Go ahead and sign up, and I'm working on fixing that email thing so all of you guys get that. Also, the show's brought to you by AncientLifeOil.com. Get this stuff in your system, the tea, the oil. It's not about, right now at this point in our life, it is not about being healthy per se, right? That's obvious. You want to be healthy. But with all of the stuff going on, all of the new stuff that I'm finding out about these pharmaceutical companies, what's in our soil, some of you already know this stuff. We got to take this stuff just to defend ourselves now. So it's really good to have this stuff in your body, right? And this is the best stuff on the planet, prepared and made and worked on by the people that are out in front. You know, Ronnie, right? This show's also brought to you by PrepareWithAFriends.com. Thank you guys for your support, all the new supporters, all the ones that continue to support. Also, if you have a UFO sighting you would like to report, and then you live out on the west side of the U.S., give UFO Seekers a call, 661-UFO-7889. Go to youtube.com/UFO Seekers. I know you guys follow them on Twitter is the best place, in my opinion, if you want to know everything that's going on with Tim and Tracy over at UFO Seekers. Right now, I believe they're getting the vehicle tuned back up and fixed so they can get back out on the road and do some more investigating. But either way, they're working on that stuff. But if you've got something you want to report, that's the number, 661-UFO-7889. So our guest tonight is Bruce Fenton, and we've spoke to him before, and I'm glad to have him back. So everybody, give him your attention. It's 5 o'clock in the morning over there, folks. And Bruce is the author of the Revolutionary Human Origins ebook series, The Forgotten Exodus. He was born in the historic English town of Cheltenham, England, and he graduated from Anglia Ruskin University in 2002, having studied information systems. He's a world traveler and a public speaker. His research activities have featured in the UK's Telegraph newspaper and on a popular science channel show. He is a current member of both the Palaeoanthropology Society and the Scientific and Medical Network, and you can check out his website at brucefenton.info. Bruce, man, it's good to have you back, brother. Really is.
I really appreciate you having me back, and look forward to having a nice chat about all kinds of weirdness. It's brilliant, absolutely.
I'm glad that, it wasn't too long after you were on Lighting the Void that I noticed that a lot of, let's just say more mainstream friend shows started to really get into your work and really notice what you were doing. And that made me happy, man. Honestly, it did. For as much that goes on in the community, as much infighting that goes on and people saying this guy's a fraud, blah, 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 blah. To see these people notice you, to see the whole community and notice what you were doing was really cool to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it has been rather like that. And I do think that somehow I managed to straddle the fence between a lot of, arguing parties in the community. So, I'm quite glad of that, that people realize I'm not particularly partisan, I just do my research and that's it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, and for those that don't know about you, I think we should start here with the idea, and I'm going to dig way back on you here a little bit in your research, but, the ancient alien concept, this idea that, aliens seeded the planet and everybody knows a lot about, there's so many people that know a lot about this, right? Or they draw attention to certain things. What is it about that whole area of research when it comes to ancient aliens that you would like to look into more, that you think is absolutely wrong, possibly?
Sure. I mean, there's been a few developments in that area, and there's a few things I, would highlight for people to look at as well. Basically, we now know, for a start, that life appears on this planet unbelievably early in the process, which we got 4.6 billion years of this planet existing. And for a long time, it was thought that life probably appeared somewhere around 3.8 billion years ago, but in the last few years we've had fossil evidence, right, that's pushed that back, and there's also been a study done which looked at through DNA, basically, to look at when is the point where we'd see the ancestor of all life, right? And between that project and the latest sort of geological studies, it now looks like life appeared on this planet 4.5 billion years ago. Right, so literally 100 million years from when the dust collected together to form our planet, then we have life. So it's improbably early, right? That's really early. The planet is just becoming hospitable. It's got some water, some atmosphere, as life just appears, right? So there's a bit of a glaring question mark there as to how could it have happened so fast. So I think that scientists are moving, certainly some scientists are moving into that camp, into this sort of panspermia camp, where it's easier to explain what we're seeing in the data by assuming that there's either an accidental process, in which life drifts through space and arrives here, whether on meteorites or comets, or that someone is seeding this planet. But either way, 100 million years is just not seen as long enough for this slow accidental process of life emerging from the sort of steamy pool. It doesn't really add up. So yeah, we've got that for a start. I think that is definitely swaying people.
Yeah. So do others subscribe to that, though? I wonder, because what others? Last time I talked to Robert Schoch and those, folks that come from his side of things, like geology and stuff, they said, well, it's at least 10,000 years older than, that's all I can say. I don't know if it's because they're so afraid that they're going to get scrutinized. I have no idea. And I don't know what is solid research. So, like, if I'm being honest with you, every time I find something that's solid on this, or I start to feel that's solid and people start spreading it around the community and they want to get behind it, then somebody else will come out and say, well, that kind of dating isn't real, or there's a flaw in this system. And it's like the one of the world's greatest mysteries is, how did we get here? How did we really, truly get here? And you're saying that you think we are making some real good headway with that.
Yeah, definitely. Really, I'd say in the last couple of years, but I mean, I don't want to sort of disparage people that have been involved in that subject for longer, of course. I mean, but certainly these last couple of years, we've had these dates pushed really far back. And one of the things that I think in the first place attracted some of the academics to that model was the work of the co-discoverers of the structure of the DNA molecule, right? Because in there was a discussion about how could such a complex molecule have formed by accident in a fairly short time. And that was going back to a point, I'm not sure how long ago DNA was, discovered, but basically a point when it was still considered that life had appeared on this planet less than 4 billion years ago, right? So even then, so with, say, 500, 600 million years, like, those academics felt that wasn't long enough to explain just how complex DNA is, for it to have happened that fast. Now, so if you put in the context of the fact that now we're at a point where we're suggesting it happened in 100 million years, right, like a sort of a seventh of what it was then, it really gets when it stretches credibility to say that this is an accidental process, because it's supposed to be a really slow, evolutionary process that's going through this geological processes and chemical processes, and then some chance event along that stage has ignited the first sparks of life, right? So that's all seen as a very slow process, right, with a good deal of chance and luck involved in it. Now, when you condense that down to just 100 million years, I know that sounds quite long to some people, 100 million years, but when you understand the incredible complexity of DNA, that you've got two systems that are kind of meshed together, right? The information, the code, if you like, and also the structuring of this molecule, that they're considered both to be incredibly complex. And I think that you get to a level of complexity which actually is quite mind-boggling. I think that sort of the chances of something to do with the way the proteins combine, but they're basically, you start looking at numbers that are bigger than the number for all of the particles, so all of the atoms in the universe or something. You get to these sort of staggering numbers when you start calculating the chances of this happening and the levels of possibility that exist in this framework, right? So at that stage you sort of say, well, it's so mind-bogglingly unlikely to happen by chance that isn't it more reasonable to think that this isn't a chance process? And I think that's basically what's kind of happened. I've seen a couple of people in the field, like say Robert Bauval, he has written on this, panspermia idea. In fact, he co-wrote a book on it, his last book on it. Because I think that I've not heard about anything that he's done since. I believe from the grapevine that he has been a bit unwell. But his last book was on that subject, and he wrote it with Vikram Singha, who is actually really the leading academic in the field of panspermia. And I know that he has another book coming out very shortly, which people can check out. But Vikram Singha for years has been writing on this subject. And just a few months back, he was the lead author on a paper that came out about, and you might have seen this, a paper that suggested that octopus may be an alien life form that was kind of seeded on this planet.
Right.
Yeah, and also that we may have viruses that are raining down from space, and that some of the people he works with, are finding evidence of viral spores basically up in the highest parts of our atmosphere. And they believe that, the space is kind of full of these viral spores that drift along, sometimes on pieces of cosmic dust, and sometimes just,
Well, didn't they
they
found plankton on I forget what ship it was, but they found plankton on some of our ships, actually, on the space station, some plankton-like material. But you're totally right about that. We're out there looking for life on other planets. Man, all you got to do is turn on the Discovery Channel. We'll look at some of this stuff in the ocean, right? If that's not alien, I don't know what is. It does seem alien to me, some of these things.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, look, we've got these extremophiles, right, that live down in these superheated, volcanic vents down in the bottom of the ocean, under incredible pressure where there's no sunlight and, these extreme heats and all this. And yet life has found a way to adapt to it, right? So if we consider the case of extremophiles, why wouldn't we have some types of life that can make their way, to the upper atmosphere and evolve to be, able to inhabit these regions and the regions just beyond, at some point they start to adapt. Because as you say, we know that plankton has made its way up out of the atmosphere. We know that bacteria and viruses and stuff have thrived up on the space station, and indeed on the outside of the space station as well.
Right.
They've carried out experiments with these water bears, these tiny little creatures that are almost indestructible. They survive up there. It's becoming more and more obvious, I think, to those that follow these things, that life can exist in space. Yeah, it may not be life like a mammal that can just fly through space. No, okay, we're not adaptive to that, but that certainly there are types of life which are better adaptive. I mean, even some of the spores of certain fungi have the hardest shells of their seeds, these spores. They have the hardest shells known, right, of any plants or whatever on Earth. Plus, they have UV reflective surfaces. Right, well, that's basically ideal for if they're traveling in space, right? So why have they evolved that? So are some of these fungus, originating from space? Stuff like that. So there's a lot of mysteries in these subjects. I personally feel that we do have life up there. I mean, there's there's a recent documentary that's come out, which is, I can't remember the exact name, but it's about the life above or something. And there's a guy, and then he really tackles this quite deeply. And he sort of shows that, look, if you examine some of the STS footage from quite a few of the missions, actually, you'll find there's what appears to be life forms, right? They keep going past the camera, keep going past the space station, or keep going past the shuttles, and you find that some of it's quite uniform. You get these circular structures which have a dark spot in the middle and a small, like, cut, almost like a slice out of a cake, that there's a small cut taken out of one side. Now, they're quite uniform, right? And then NASA will say, oh, they're ice crystals, but ice crystals are not going to all be circular with a little niche out of one side and a dark spot, right? That's not how ice crystals work, yeah? So what we're seeing there is something either that's artificially constructed or is a natural something, whether a plant or an animal, but it's something natural that is adapted to that environment, right?
What do you think it is? I mean, I know you're an evidence research kind of guy, but what do you think it is really? Like,
I think some of these are animals. I think some of these are complex life. They're animals that have adapted. These are extremophiles, and this complicates the UFO subject, right? Because if you are to glance at one of these videos, and if you're not basically an imbecile. So when I say that, I mean the people that would say these are ice crystals when they're quite clearly not, because to me you're really challenging yourself there just to go along with the party line that there's no life there, right? Because it's quite obvious these things are uniform, which we only see in either artificiality or in nature, right? In terms of living systems, right? So this is something that's evolved to be there, right? So I think that we have some kind of complex life, and I think that they're able to exist out on the edges of our environment, just outside into space. And what you notice in some of these videos is that these things swarm over a lightning storms, right? So they seem to, in some way, yes. So that's one of the things you'll notice. And in fact, if you look at it, and I checked this out, Google UFOs and lightning storms, right? You'll find that saucer-type craft, I don't think they are, some of these are craft, right? That they appear in the lightning storms. And there's a few good videos where people have took videos where they see the flashes and you see these things in the storm, right? And if you go to these STS videos, they're looking down on a storm and you see these things swarming in above the storm. So it looks like we have something that feeds on the energy being produced in a lightning storm, and it happens to be circular in shape. So it looks awfully like flying saucers, right? So this is one of the things I want to sort of get into, is that we need to really break up what's called ufology into a framework where we would look at 3 different areas, right? We would look at living things, organisms, like aerial. We
need to broaden our perspective.
We do. We need to. Otherwise, this isn't going to work out. Put it that way. It's going to be very slow. Look, it's been 70 years so far. Right, that's pretty slow. Now, if we were to break this up and say, look, we need a subsection where we look at living things in the upper atmosphere. Right. We need another subsection that looks for strange energy, formations in the upper atmosphere, and then a third one that looks for artificial, things, vehicles, AI probes, whatever else these things are. As long as we lump them all together in ufology and say, well, these are all UFOs, that's not going to work out, because everyone's got their own view on what a UFO is, right? Because, obviously for a lot of people, they mean an alien spaceship, right? But if that's lumping in some kind of life that's living up there in the upper atmosphere, then we've got a real problem. How do you really progress a field where it's so jumbled and confused?
Exactly. I mean, I wish you said it to the T, man. Like that's how it is with me too. Because to me, there's truth. Like if I burn my hand on the stove, it's hot, and then other people say, well, that's a UFO. It's an alien. Well, I don't know. Mm-hmm. That could be military. It could be an organism. You were talking about feeding off of energy. I do remember watching these videos of these black looking things. At first, I thought it was just like an anomaly of sun rays that would go around certain things. But when you really watch it, there's something that comes into the sun and feeds the energy off of. Have you seen these things?
Yeah, there's things appearing around the sun. Yep. And also some of these strange things that were in the STS videos, you can only see them when the sunlight hits them, right? So it seems that I think the UV light makes them show up, right? So the rest of the time they are quite transparent. So again, we have that issue. And you know, in the UFO subject, people say that a lot of the things they see, right, are transparent, that you can kind of see through them, that you can barely see them, or they look almost like cloud-like, but they're circular.
Right.
I think some of these things, you can't really detect them normally in our visible, light spectrum. If you were to just see one going past, you might not notice it. But when UV light kind of hits it, it can show up. So if they're directly in sunlight, sometimes you'll just see some element of them. But if they were to be in, a cloudier setting, or see them at night, or whatever, they're so translucent that you would struggle really to say that there's a physical object there. And then that would look like, that may also give rise to, like, is it interdimensional and we're barely seeing it? Well, that could be, but you might be seeing something that is translucent, a life form that light passes through it mainly, right? And then, of course, we have these energy phenomena. We get into the subject of, say, ball lightning, right? Now, ball lightning, I have a huge problem with that, right? Because, first of all, it's not lightning. If you look at the definition of lightning, right, ball lightning does not mesh with that. This is not just a discharge from the sky to the ground or whatever, with a high energy event. Because some of these things that are being called ball lightning persist for long periods, right? And they also fly down people's chimneys, fly around their houses, and fly out through the window. Now, does that sound to you like lightning, or does that sound like something that is intelligently controlled in some way, right? So, and then other ones, people see them just appear during a lightning storm, they bounce along the ground and disappear. Now, that one of those sounds natural, and one doesn't. So again, we have this problem where that would be lumped, yeah, where all things that are spherical and glowing are ball lightning. Well, that's a terrible way of looking at that subject. What we should be looking at is drilling down and saying, well, are all things that are spherical and glowing behaving in the same way? Are they all the same phenomena, right? Because I don't think they are. And again, the UFO field would lump them in, right? All of that, because they'll say, well, look, we've got the Foo Fighters, which are a glowing sphere. So this is another, let's lump it all in, right? So the UFO subject with no subcategories there at all.
Which is completely what you're saying, limiting and counterproductive.
Yeah,
totally.
It is, because in no other fields, right, would we have that. Like, we go into biology, of course, you have biology as the catch-all, but then, that breaks down into, obviously, you've got astrobiology, you've got marine biology, and then, subcategories of marine biology. You'll go right down to the guy who specializes in, minute crustaceans that live, in the Pacific or whatever, right? That's how those fields of science progress, because they break down the workload into specializations, right? And then those specializations can discuss with each other. So they can bring their data back together. Sometimes specialization can be a pain too, because sometimes one guy in an office doesn't know what the other guy is doing. So I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I would say that they've gone too much down that road in some aspects.
Well, do you feel like it's changing though? Do you feel like, obviously you're a part of the change, no doubt about it. But do you honestly feel like that we're starting to make a change when it comes to this research, or we're still combating the same old stuff?
I think we're starting to make a change, but I think most people haven't realized the need for it. I think that you look at, say, an organization like TTSA, I think that they understand, among those, the people on the board, obviously some of whom are scientists, I recognize that, yes, these people are coming out of government, they're coming out of military projects and stuff, but at the same time, some of these people are scientists, right? So they do understand how academic research works, right? They do realize that there is a need to put a sort of framework, a more rigorous framework into this. And I think that's one of their goals, I imagine, is to start breaking this up, of course, into things like, research into craft debris, research into the genetics, research into... I think some people do get it. And of course, there's been a few quite noted scientists that have come into the UFO field over the years, and they've tried to apply some of that academic rigor as well, and they haven't necessarily come in a team. These are usually individuals, like we've got Stanton Friedman and people that, that have applied a more hard science view. So it has been nudged along a bit over time, and I do think there are people, coming into these subjects that do get this, but for the most part, the general community of researchers and interested people do not really get this. And I'm hoping that when they're listening, they can start to click, because how do you really forward a subject? Now they say, why don't scientists come into this? Well, there's an obvious answer to that, because first of all, there's no framework for them to come into, right? So there's nothing they can say, well, I'm going to move across from ocean biology into, ocean ufology or something, or the study of anomalous ocean phenomena, right? That doesn't exist, right? Right. And then on top of that, where do they get funded? right? There's no structure for that. There's no university that's looking at it. There's no way for them to begin, because who wants to totally jack in their job, right? Be completely broke, have to work with what is a mixture of very solid people and lunatics, right? And just jump into that field and then be called an idiot, and be told they've gone nuts. Like, that's not really where most academics want their career to go, and we just have to accept that. That's reality. Because would we do it? Would we want to do it? If that was us, we if you were at Harvard and you're doing quite well and you're looking after your family and all the rest of it. And someone said, well, you should come and study UFOs. I mean, you'd look into it and you'd probably think, God, that's the end of my career, forever. Isn't it?
Let's stop getting that. Well, I'm going to stop being able to pay the water bill after that for sure. But yeah,
absolutely.
We got to take a break here, but I want to, you did mention some phrases earlier, things like a possibility of interdimensional things, and I know you're about evidence. So we're going to get more into your research. We'll be right back, guys, with Bruce Fenton.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
So, have you heard of heavy metals? I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at GetTheT.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. No, not cleansing the outside of your body, but cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great, so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
Alex. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, The Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm. Call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your northern self and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussel, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Well, I got to say, it's good to have Bruce back on here, man. These kind of conversations are the most stimulating, mind-stimulating conversations to me here on the program. As most of you know, I got into the alien thing, or the idea of hybrid humans, from the study of angels and the esoteric, and started realizing that maybe these things aren't quite what they seem, and then it leads into real research. And actually, if I'm being honest with you, Bruce, that's what got me interested, you and Daniela's book. And then as I started looking into more of your research, I was like, hold the phone here. We got some real academics. We got people that really care in this field. And I know I stressed that, like, okay, get over it, buddy. But for somebody like me, and I'm sure others too, it's really a breath of fresh air.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I mean, it's, I consider myself a scientist in the sense of, once upon a time, not all scientists had PhDs, right? That's a modern phenomena. If we go back to, obviously, even people like Newton and stuff, it's not essential to have all kinds of like glowing academic credentials to be a scientist, but you do have to use the scientific method, right? And you have to be working within that framework. Now, some of what I do is definitely probably, people would say, well, that's stretching the idea that it's in the framework. But a lot of it is, I try and apply some scientific rigor to the models I look at. And when I go to, say, I guess, be critical or attack, an idea, I'm applying scientific rigor. Now, so you can be a scientist without being an academic, with a PhD, which people have to sort of remember that, we don't have to then be lumped in as just totally, untrained or fringe. I mean, I have a university qualification, but just not in perhaps the field. I mean, you can't really have one in the study of UFOs or aliens or anything particularly. I suppose you can have exobiology kind of degrees and whatnot. But as you know, these people they're thinking abstractly of life on another planet somewhere that they haven't detected and that what it might be like. And so again, it's not like there's anyone out there really in academia who is truly expert in all of these things.
Yeah,
I mean, again, it's theoretical because they haven't found something. So
they claim too. I've heard people say an expert on Bigfoot, expert on what? Like expert on Bigfoot and UFOs? I don't think so. But
no, it's like,
I want to mention something real quick. And your tweet that you put out, you said, "Look, I exist only to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum." You said, "Join me tonight as we wade through." The fringe research topics and sort out the good from the BS. And, used to, if you said something like that on Twitter, you would get attacked, like bombarded by people. But I think that we truly are in a time where people are starting to realize that they're emotionally involved in their beliefs of, ufology, and the skeptics too. Some of them are starting to realize they're emotionally involved with disproving things. And now, at least I feel, folks just want to know now. It's time to start to figuring things out. We want to know as much as we can. Forget the hype.
I think you're right. I think you're definitely right there. And, when I get people say to me, well, I believe that actually, the evolution of humans was like this, or I believe that the aliens are doing this. I've got to the point where I tend to say I don't want to talk to you about your beliefs, because for me, belief is an immediate barrier and a problem, right? Which on a one-to-one basis with someone is almost certainly just going to be an argument, because if they're coming to me with they have a fixed belief, right, it's not based on the evidence, it's based on what they want to be true. And so if I then say, well, no, I've got this information, they're not really asking for that information. The people that are genuinely interested will look at what you've got, or they will consider it, or they'll say, well, I thought it was like this, but, you're saying it's something else, what's your evidence? Or that I can deal with. But, a lot of the time it's that, well, I believe it was actually like this. I believe that the Romulans came and they did. And I think, well, that's great, but you're offering nothing for me to accept or to analyze. You're just telling me, I thought this in my head, therefore it's true. And I think that's a ridiculous position, right? Because how does that help anything move forward? Yeah. So
it doesn't.
Really, it doesn't. So we do need to have this kind of evidence-based process. If people really want these subjects to progress, and it's not a singular subject. I mean, all these fringe type subjects which are existing on the scientific fringe at the moment, the only way they can move forward is if we start applying some of that rigor. We may not have to take it to the level of full-on academia, but we do have to apply some of the similar scientific rigor to these topics, right? If we genuinely want to understand what's going on in them, and if we're not trying to just create personal religions where, well, I believe, whatever it is, really, to be honest, whatever you stop in belief in, I do think it's a problem. Now, we all have some beliefs, right? That's human nature. But if we're going to really want to get to a point where we understand topics, then we have to try to put those beliefs to one side whilst we're looking at the evidence.
Absolutely. Science is I think people get the idea, Bruce, really, that Lighting the Void and even the Fringe FM is 100% about just talking about cool stories. And it is, in a way, because sometimes, as yourself, I don't know how much you're willing to share, but you're an academic, but I know you've had some experiences, man, right? And so I like to hear those type of things, but I don't make assumptions on them, because I want science. When science proves something to me that it's real, that's fabulous to me, even if it disproves something.
Yeah, I think, I would have probably gone more down the path of an academic career, if logical course had run, right? Because, I went to an intelligence streamed boys' grammar school in the UK. I went on to, college and university, but I didn't go into sort of the academic fields in the end. But I think, for me, the changing point was becoming involved with the British rave scene, experimenting with some hallucinogens and things which did open, I know people say cliche, that open your mind, but it does make you question the nature of reality, and it does change your perception on what life is, what's important, and those kinds of areas, right? So that probably derailed me from becoming a more orthodox, close-minded perhaps, but more orthodox kind of scientist, right? And going down a pathway which is definitely more, I guess, open-minded, and being interested in a wide range of strange things. So that was transformative. But it means that, at least in my case, rather than going just down into that kind of, I guess, more of a classical research direction, I'm able to apply my mind to these topics. And, I'm glad of that in a way, because it means that I can bring to bear, perhaps, that kind of thinking into a subject where not enough people are doing that. And I don't want to sort of blow my own trumpet in that way. I'm just saying that, I'm aware, looking around.
Toot your own horn. Do it.
I can see that there's not enough people that are treating these topics in a sort of scientific way. Now, that's not to say, if people trawl through all the things I've ever put out there and I've written about and talked about on shows going back, 10 years or more, there's going to be some stuff in there that really is not scientific, or it's just me just guessing or whatever. I get that. Obviously I've had my own journey and my own progression as well to get to this point where now I can see clearly, if you like. I think, well, hang on a minute, we need to divide these fields up a bit better, and we need to have some kind of framework to really dig in and understand. And also that we do need some academic help. That, again, I think one of the problems that most of us will recognize is that funding research, how do you do that? I mean, most of us are operating on a shoestring budget, right? I have basically, most of the time I have very close to £0, funding me, right? Yeah. So how do I really get stuff done? I mean, I'm not going to be able to, like I said earlier, I'm not going to send up sort of atmospheric probes or something to look for, extremophiles or alien craft.
Tools.
No, I can't do that. No, so I can't, and I recognize that I can't even buy a good telescope, right? So where do I start with that? So there's really limited, yeah. Now,
but you have traveled though. You have traveled though, right? You've researched areas. You've put your knowledge to the ground though.
I've done what I can within the resources and means that I've been able to bring to bear from my own efforts, right? I've never had external funding. I've never had, I don't even have money coming in from, say, Patreon or, donations. Like from my work, my normal work activities, and obviously from whatever I generate with books, that goes into these, these efforts of mine, but that's it. So obviously, it's allowed me to travel. I've been able to get to 6 of the 7 continents. I've been to all sorts of ancient sites, met a lot of interesting people, been to various events, conferences and whatnot, connecting with people. So I've done what I can within it. But yes, for the next level, you definitely need to have some access to people that can, get time on a major telescopes or can do, chemical testing of material and, all of these things that really are, they really are needing to involve the academic scientists, right? So we can do a lot without them, but there is a point you hit where you do need them. That's where I'd look at that.
Well, and I feel the same way about astronomy. There's a lot of people that they do the UFO thing and say this is UFO. But if you go talk to an astronomer, somebody that's looking in the skies, or a group of astronomers, you'll find out that yes, UFOs are real. This stuff's real, and it's even more fascinating than you can imagine. But so much of it can be explained. It's incredible.
Yeah. That's why I don't like the term UFO, because, again, it's this catch-all where, I saw a UFO, i.e., because I'm ignorant of aerial phenomena, everything's a UFO, so what does that mean then in the end? So if you just have people who are ignorant of aerial phenomena that say, well, I don't know what those things up there are, therefore they're all UFOs. I mean, for some people, every satellite that goes over is a UFO. Right. Oh, yeah, so what do you do with that? What do you do with that kind of useless data? Right. If someone's saying, well, I see UFOs all the time. What are they? There's these little lights and they go over in this path over my house every night. And, I think that might be a satellite, bud.
I'll tell you something else, too, that's going to piss a lot of people off. And I'm going to say it, man. This whole idea of I'm going to meditate real hard and they're going to power up for me. Oh, look, it's powering up. What it's powering up for you? You sure it's not just reflecting moon or sunlight or something? All right, like that happens.
It's difficult. That's the thing again. Yeah, unless we apply some framework to this, it's really difficult. Then, what is a UFO, right? Because I don't think that there's many people that would agree on the definition of a UFO, and that you can be having a conversation with someone about UFOs, and they're really thinking in their head about something completely different to you. Because it's so vague, isn't it? Just unidentified flying objects. So it's a catch-all for anything that people have failed to identify, and then other people be using that term to mean alien spaceships. They're not even meaning unidentified flying objects, they're just meaning alien spaceships. So we're not even agreeing on the actual terminology. So that's a really basic fundamental flaw in the entire discussion. Because again, in academia they'll have specific topics for it. They would have, there's a term for each entity within the system, whereas for us as a catch-all, you can have a giant triangle, with lights all over it, and it's categorized the same as the glowing orb that's pulsating along, or as the translucent things in the STS videos, or they're all lumped into UFO. Now, I think that's really unhelpful, and I think the UFO is a term that needs to go. And I know that that's unpopular. I've had a few people say to me, "No."
Well, what would you call them? You want to start categorizing things better. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I start off with aerial anomalies, because the first thing is I'm only interested in the anomalies, the aerial anomalies, the things that can be explained or that behave in a way which is comprehensible and easily explainable if you know what things are. they're not anomalous. They might be flying, and you might have failed to identify them. So yes, they might be a UFO, but I don't care about those ones. I care about the ones that behave in an anomalous way or have anomalous structure, anomalous behavior. Yeah. So I would start out with the field being called, and basically anomalous aerial phenomena, and then that would have subdivisions where we would look at energetic, biological, technological. Right. So straight away we've got 3 disciplines, and then each of those would have subcategories. Technological, you might start to break down into things like, interdimensionality, evidence of that, or energy, evidence of metallic structure. You can start to specialize, and the same is in the energetic category. You start to say, well, is the phenomena, is it natural to this realm, or are we seeing an energy that's breaking through from some other interdimensional source? And again, with the biological life, we can say, is it terrestrial that's come up from the surface and evolved as an extremophile, or are we seeing life that's coming in from space? These things that are drifting through space. Right. So straight away, we've got 3 major categories, which would then have subcategories. And I would want people that would specialize in areas of those. I mean, they can be generalists. They can know a lot about all of them, but they would apply themselves to at least one of those categories fairly rigorously, and they would communicate with the other people. So we're not, again, we're not going to this thing where people are cut off from each other. You'd still have communication, but you'd start to have specialists. So next time when the media go looking for someone to talk to, they're not going to go to the UFO guy, right? They're going to think, well, what sounds a bit more sensible than that? Oh, there's these people that work in anomalous aerial phenomena. They've got a guy here who's a specialist in the technological constructs within this. We think this sighting was technological. Hey, can we speak to your guy that deals with that department, right? And instead of then getting the silly season news, it's going to be very difficult for them because it sounds completely different, doesn't it? So you've got the guy on today who is the specialist in.
It makes me excited thinking about it, though. Actually, if that was real, and this is the only thing, Bruce, that there are a lot of things about, you mentioned to the stars earlier, right? There are lots of things that bother me about that whole situation. Okay. But the fact that another thing that bothers me that I'm not afraid to say to anybody is the fact that we even have at least something where people are trying to do, at least show us that they're trying to do something, which I feel is there's some hidden stuff there for sure. But, and look what we're doing. We're automatically a lot of people just want to destroy it immediately. Throw it out.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we know it's going to be imperfect, but in a way it's a kind of a bridgehead towards normalizing the UFO subject. It doesn't mean that TTSA will achieve that. They might, but they are opening a door that will allow other collectives that have this kind of idea of applying, scientific study to these fields. So someone else might say, well, you know what, rather than just trying to pull TTSA apart, why don't we form something that does a similar, has a similar kind of vision as the one that they are saying they have, but with, different people in it, without, say, the military or the ex-intelligence people, but with scientists and, dedicated researchers working together in an organization, say, let's for the Anomalous Aerial Phenomena Research Foundation or something, and have that without this kind of shadow across it of, are we dealing with deep state intelligence? Is this disinfo? Is this propaganda? But to just get rid of that. But they're opening the door for that because they're making people at least think that, hang on a minute, what's been missing from this field all this time? And that's this kind of serious, sensible organization that the media can go to, because look what the media is doing. So at the end of the day, what's happening, right? They're not coming to people that have been in this field for 20, 30 years anymore, right? They're going to the TTSA and they're talking to such and such, respectable, former either academic or, military person and getting their opinions, right? The Times and the Post, right? They're not doing front pages about the well-known ufologists, are they? Right?
No, they're not.
No,
actually,
no, they're not.
Right.
So we have to recognize what's happening there and adapt to it, because people can say what they want, right? They can attack TTSA, but the people in that organization don't need to care very much because they've made it quite clear they're not trying to have a conversation just with the fringe and with the people that are already in this topic. They're facing the public via the mass media, talking to the millions, right? The millions of people, not to some small sub-community, right, which is always full of, infighting and a lot of weirdness and woo. They're not really focusing on that. Yes, I'm sure they'd love it if all those people come along because those would be more diehard fans. But that's not who they need to talk to, because they have the ear of the media. They understand PR. They understand that, you can hire a guy and he can have your story in all the newspapers next week, right? So when you're in that position where you've got the money, the contacts, you've got the story, you can basically get into any newspaper. Also, they have the respectability. Now, these are elements that have been sadly missing in ufology, and we can see that reflected in the media, that what they'll put in there is weird UFO guy claims such and such, and there'll be a picture of a little green man with the silly season kind of saucer behind him, and that's what it's been for a long time, right? But they're having to change that now, because people are the terminology is also being changed, and again, this is deliberate, to UAPs and AAVs, and a lot of people don't like that, because they think, it's UFOs, it's UFOs, it has to be, that's what it's always been, and we'll lose all of the history. You know what? That's fine. Keep that. If you want to stay in an area that has basically gone nowhere in 70 years, if you want to cling to that, great. But for people that want to actually move this forward, you do need to change that terminology, because otherwise, if you call up to, a serious investigative journalist and say, so I've got a UFO story, they'll be like, oh, you can pass that on to the guy who does all the, the silly season stuff, But if you say, look, I'm a researcher in anomalous aerial phenomena, first of all, they wonder, what the heck's that, right? And then
you got subcategories below that,
yeah,
too.
And I want you to talk to this guy who works with me. He's the specialist in anomalous energies in the upper atmosphere. And, suddenly it's a completely different conversation, isn't it? Because that journalist is now thinking, oh, well, I'm talking to some sensible person here who may have a real story for me, right? So we have to accept human nature, and we have to accept that these terms have got so much baggage, and also that they're not precise enough. They don't tell people enough, that they really don't know if they're dealing with someone who's off the planet or is a serious researcher, because, ufologist calling them can be either, yeah? Whereas, that's why I think we need to move beyond that. So I think TTSA is sort of doing that. I'm not saying that I agree with everything they're doing. And, I have my suspicions. Look, I've been around long enough to know that, there's been a lot of disinfo, there's been a lot of, tricks played on people, and this is a subject that's fraught with that, and we know that, and we know that the military and the Air Force have used the subject to cover up their own projects as well, and there's a kind of a feedback loop between using their technology to cover up what may be non-human
you know what?
technology.
I'll tell you, the one thing that gets passed over that I can't get over in my head about that is when Tom DeLonge came out there, they did that whole presentation, and I don't think enough people, they kind of said, oh, that's funny, and washed over it. But when he went out there and presented this to the world, he looked like someone had a gun to his head. We're talking about Tom DeLonge, a rock star that gets in front of crowds on a constant basis, and now his veins are bulging out of his neck, and he can't swallow hardly. What's up with that? That just kind of weirded me out.
I imagine it myself sometimes. Look, if tomorrow I was going into work with my board and it's, half a dozen former, say spies, deep state scientists, like, there's a bit of me is like, oh God, I've got to go in again with all those guys that always steamroller me, because you would be steamrolled, wouldn't you? I mean, let's be honest. I don't think any one of us would be walking out those meetings in control.
They told him every word to say and what would happen if he didn't. We got to
be realistic. That's their specialist. They specialized in, in directing people for a long time, and for influencing people. That's actually their jobs, for a long time. Like, it's very unlikely you can go into that board, because as a normal public citizen with, say, there's I think about a dozen of them between the board and the advisors and these people, and think that you're going to come out of that as in control of it. I mean, it's a ludicrous kind of idea. So I can understand that he probably goes to meetings with one set of ideas in his head and comes out with having been steamrolled and with a completely different narrative that he's meant to go out and say. So I do feel for him, because I don't think I'd want to work in those circumstances. It'd be quite uncomfortable to deal with those people day to day. Even if they mean well.
Pulling on his collar almost, I'm like, man, it looks like they put it to him. They might have handcuffed him to a chair or something. I don't know, It looks bad.
I think it's probably enough to be in there, and that really you're the only independent kind of researcher in the whole room, and everyone else kind of has more of a shared system and a shared kind of narrative, right? So, I mean, that's a very difficult kind of meetings to deal with, isn't it? Where you know that you're like the fringe guy and everyone else is the kind of the more mainstream and government type people. I mean, I don't know how you could expect it to be anything but being steamrollered. You know, I would expect to be steamrollered in those meetings. So I'm realistic. You know, and obviously Tom's narrative and their narrative doesn't mesh. I mean, if we're like honest about it, if we look through the things that Tom talks about in his interviews and that he's written about in his books with Peter Lavender, you know, that they don't mesh well with the narrative that comes out in the press through TTSA, right? So, I mean, to me, there's some discord there. Now, I don't know how Tom feels about that. I would be a bit uncomfortable because, look, if it was my company, at least on paper, that TTSA is his company, and yet when it gives out statements to these mass media, you know, where you've got millions and millions of eyes on it, a lot of the time it really isn't tackling even the stuff in his books. He's not even talking about his books, which is really weird, because obviously I would want my content, you know, whatever, to be discussed if I'm talking with the guy from like the New York Times or something. You know, I'd think like, well, this is a crucial opportunity to kind of pitch my book or my new project, but, you know, to really say, well, this is what the information in it's going to be, but to then find that most of the narratives left out. There's not really discussion of, you know, the Greek gods being aliens, or that, you know, that there's life is everywhere in space and there's all kinds of aliens visiting us. These things that Tom does talk about, you know, but then they seem to be cleaned up out of the TTSA narrative as it goes out to the media. So
I think they showed him a film. I think they said, okay, I want you to watch this. And they pulled their little projector screen down and they showed the actual Roswell crash or whatever. And they showed they showed people run on the scene, and he said these people were going to go tell the public this, and then he showed them the total annihilation of those people. He said, "Now watch this again." And, you know, run that back about 5 or 6 times in his head, right? And they said, "This is what you're going to go out and say." And you know, he comes out and his face is just beat red. I'm like, yeah, something's can definitely, at the very least, I'm not trying to get conspiratorial, but obviously controlled, you know.
Well, he has said that he didn't sleep for 3 days, so something they said or did was quite upsetting. Although he did say they didn't sleep for 3 days afterwards. So, yeah, I mean, that would definitely put you off, wouldn't it? Be like, and here's the guy that was going to go to the press.
Yeah, he was real excited. He was going to break history. Yeah.
Yeah, look, there he is now. That's him slumped over there.
Yeah.
You know, so,
man.
But yeah, I mean, definitely
they know all the good mind tricks too, you know, so.
Definitely said he was uncomfortable after what they told him. So, I mean, they've, you know.
Well, look,
but it is strange because
I just wanted to pick your brain on this, Bruce. I really did. I know we haven't really gotten into your research, but I like the way you think, and I really wanted to pick your brain on this. And, you know, we're at the top of the hour. So when we come back, I do want to get a little bit more into your research and what you're looking into now. And we'll be right back.
We can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much. What a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com. We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're here with Bruce Fenton. Look, their Discord chat. I realize some of you guys are not able to get into the Fringe FM chat. I just found out about this yesterday. I don't know what's going on. Some people can get in. I'll get to the bottom of it. But if you really got a question for Bruce right now, the best thing to do, you could call in at 1-800-588-0335. You could also call the direct number, which the direct number, I'm sure you figured out, it's a forward, but it's 501-424-5130. I'm not trying to, I'm seeing some funny messages here on Twitter. Actually, it's hilarious, but I'm not trying to detour from your research, but I do like to get into the mind of what you think, because I feel like that's important. I don't think, for those of us that truly want to know these things, understand that there are people out there that have incredible research capabilities that want to know as well. But why are they not here? I want people to know that. Why are they not here? You know what I mean? And you know why. Mm-hmm. You just explained it. All of it.
Yep.
And so
because we get a lot, we do get a lot of people ask that. It's like, why don't the scientists do this, or why won't they deal with it? And that's kind of why that we're not helping it. Because we have to allow them a foundation on which to stand. That so they can start to do that. Some of that work is happening. That we know that there's this kind of invisible college where there are scientists that are working quietly behind the scenes, right? That they do collaborate. And I think that's been going on a long time. In fact, the idea of an invisible college has gone on for, I think, a couple of centuries, that there's been scientists that have worked on controversial or problematic topics, who've worked behind the scenes, whether that's spiritual topics or, alien-related matters, and that they've collaborated quietly, right? So that does happen, but obviously they're put in a position where they don't feel comfortable to do it in public. And again, that's to do with how these fields work, right? So, whether it ends up in the deep state or ends up in a secret, scientific project, that's not really helping those of us who are wanting something more public, is it? So, I will say that from what I understand, some of the invisible college stuff, the intention there is that they will filter out their results into the public as they come up, which obviously is different to the military, where a lot of the time they won't at all, so at least I suppose with these kind of secret scientists, that they will share stuff eventually. That's the intention, is they find the result and then they'll come public. But we could certainly do with a truly public research foundation that, the whole process is kind of transparent. And transparency is the big issue. Look, transparency, whether it's with TTSA, whether it's with these, the Invisible College, or whether it's with the military scientists, the thing that the public generally has been asked for is more transparency in these research fields, right? So the only way we can have that is if we have a kind of a public foundation that regularly gives out its results, saying, look, this is where we're at, this is how we're doing. A bit like, again, like how SETI kind of does things,
right.
But not a telescope based thing, where we're just thinking about exoplanets or whatever, but we're dealing with stuff here, phenomena that's terrestrial and near Earth orbit.
Well, I get excited about that stuff, but I'm kind of a scientific nerd, but I get excited about it too, because it's important. This whole fast radio burst thing's been going on now. That's stuff that we need to keep looking into, But I already saw immediately when the articles came out. You're right. I mean, there is a problem with the media for sure, especially online articles, magazines, and stuff. You got to watch out for the mainstream. Like I try to go off, and I know this is going to sound even more fringy to you, Bruce, but I try to actually go off the hedges a little bit with that. So I'll go into places like Fate magazine or Paranoia magazine with Ron and Olav and stuff. They do some hardcore research, and it doesn't get looked at because it's clumped in, by academia too much, because it's clumped into, conspiracy, right, or the fanatics. Yep. And some of these guys, they just said, you know what, if you want to call me that and don't understand it, that's fine. But for the others that really want to know, that just feel like they're in the dark, we want everything to come together. That's all I'm saying. That's it. And I think we need, ideally somebody out there, and there's obviously people like this, somebody out there who has the money, obviously we've got your sort of your Robert Bigelows, these people that have the money and the interest, and to open foundations. And obviously, he had the NIDS research and all that kind of, but we need people like that who are interested in creating something. Because again, if you look at the Breakthrough Foundation or Breakthrough Initiatives, which is basically this Russian
billionaire, right, who has set up his own kind of SETI. Yeah, you know, and SETI itself is a privately funded organization as well. So these structures do get created, and they're usually created by some wealthy person, right, who wants to know, yeah, and then so they just start throwing millions of dollars at it, right? We need that, but we need it for a foundation that's dealing with near Earth, right? The near Earth environment, yeah. Because the problem we have at the moment is the two biggest organizations, Breakthrough Initiatives and SETI, are really hyper focused on far, far away, right? So people say, "Oh, well, why aren't they finding? You know, why aren't they finding the evidence here? Why aren't they finding that UFO data? Why aren't they dealing with the abduction?"
Because they've already scoured the solar system.
Yeah, they're looking far out. That's the thing, yeah, because none of these things are really focused on Earth and near Earth, because the assumption is now in place that there's nothing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to build telescopes that look for signals from far, far away.
Right.
Well, that's a problem, because, of course, if you're looking far, far away, you won't see something that's right next to you. Well, you know, if I've got a telescope that sees the other side of the universe, it's no good for detecting like a spaceship that's going in orbit around Earth. That's not what it's built for. Yeah. So we really need a foundation that says, hey, we think there may be evidence of intelligence in this environment and in the nearer, on the planet, under the ground, in the near Earth environment, perhaps on nearby moons and planets. And that's going to be the entire focus of the foundation, is just that environment. And again, looking at life, looking at technology, and looking at energy. But it's just within our solar system, and with a hyper focus on planet Earth, below, above, and on the surface level. That's the only way to see it. And I think if we have that, suddenly it'll be almost like flicking the light switch on in the room, and we'll see loads of stuffs there. Yeah. And that's when people say we can't see it. Like SETI will say, well, we don't see any evidence. Well, no, because you've got a radio telescope, that's beaming, looking for beams from the other side of the cosmos, mate. I mean, it's not set up to find a craft or a vortex opening in someone's garden.
You're a clever guy, Bruce. You know that. You really, I mean, seriously, here's the thing. I know, and I can tell already, that you have had some pretty intense, possibly spiritual or paranormal experiences, but you're smart enough.
A lot.
You're smart enough to know how to go about it. Right? You're smart enough to say. It's got to be balance. Yeah, well, yeah, but you got to, based on what we're just saying now, that balance isn't really out there. It's kind of weird. It's like when you and I have a discussion, it's fantastic. It's like people. But then when we get in groups, we become insane sometimes. And this is the most amazing thing to me, is I will talk to you, and I'm talking about guests that talk about extremely woo type stuff, out of the body experiences, things like that. But they're really good at it. They know what they're talking about, and they've done the research. They've had the experience. And then after the show, and I'm not going to name any names because I know they don't want me to, but it's happened on several occasions. They'll say, I run into so many delirious people that sometimes I feel like they're schizophrenic. And we just got through talking about traveling in dimensions with this person or something, Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah. It is. You go to a conference in it and you'll meet very cool people, but you'll also meet that there are loons. There've always been loons attracted to particularly paranormal topics, and I've had, I've had people that talk to you. First, they say, well, I have these, entities that talk to me, and then it'll be, and there's also this voice in my head that's telling me what to do. And you start thinking, right, so this is transcending paranormal into schizophrenia. Yeah. Right? So, I mean, and you can't totally separate them either, because schizophrenia, right, is an evolutionary thing, right? It's come up. There's a reason why it's there, and a lot of schizophrenics in other cultures would have been shamans and stuff, right? So we have to be really careful, because these people seem to see into the morph, they're seeing some of the weird stuff. So some of them generally are, I think, experiencing psychic phenomena and stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm referring to is more like, when something is just not right, though. Let's say a guy's wearing silver Speedos and he looks like a pro wrestler, and that's all he's wearing. There's something going on there.
That's right. There's some people it's over the edge, and it's that what you're dealing with is hardcore, like madness, right? So I mean, it is difficult, and it is difficult. The field is it's very open to people that have problems to feel more normal.
Yeah.
Because like if you've got a lot of things in your head, and then you can hang out with people who are kind of accepting of that, because they say, well, I've had all these strange experiences. Well, I've had loads. So every day is full of strangeness.
Yeah,
they've
met Lucifer. They saw a fairy.
Yeah,
they've been put on a ship. I'm like, all of that,
right.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing as well that we have to get at is that, I am for there being a psychological or, a psychiatrical type aspect in a division. If there was a foundation looking at this topic, I would want some experts on human psychology in it, right? I know that a lot of people wouldn't like it. They don't like it when you start bringing in that there's a psychological element to most of this phenomena, but there is, right?
Yeah.
So, and we have to deal with that. And a lot of these things, like, for example, the alien abductions, right? From my perspective, you cannot deal with this subject without a knowledge of human psychology and the workings of the mind, because it's very clear to me that some of these events, quite a lot of these events, are happening in the mind, right? And they're not happening physically. Now, that's not all of them, yeah? But there's a whole proportion of these. And again, that doesn't mean they're invalid, yeah? Because let's just say that there is something which exists, out there, whether it's interdimensional or whatever, and it's able to hack into the human mind, right? And put in the experience of you being abducted, taken onto a craft, and experimented on, right? And you totally feel that. You're totally immersed in it. It's totally vivid. It's real for you. But your partner is sitting in the room watching TV and knows that you didn't go anywhere, right? Because they saw you. They saw you the whole time. Yeah, they saw you there the whole time. But yet you had that experience. So what do we call that then? Like, if we don't bring in people that understand the workings of the brain, of the mind, neurologists and people to understand that, we have a problem, because we can't just say all these abductions are all physical, they're all happening in, our totally awake state. They're not, because we know that in a lot of these cases there are people there that would say, well, no, they never left the room. Yeah. So there's a problem there that we can't, again, it's that lumping, people want to lump everything together and say that all of these experiences are happening one way, but they're not. Right. Some of them, some people seem to disappear, and they appear in the woods, in their pants, and they've got marks on them. So it'd be very hard to say that just happened in their mind, right? There's something physically seems to have happened to that person. Yeah. So there's different categories again in these phenomena. I would want some specialists in neurology and in psychology dealing with this, because, and again, if something is hacking into us, we want to know how it's doing it, right? And we want to know how you stop that. Yeah, so we won't get that by saying all of these abductions are physical. How dare you question, the holy see in this subject, right? Because that is just crazy. Because if there is an entity or an energy or something doing that, we need to know how to stop it.
They could be found psychologically sane too, right? Think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
if they're I was watching Strange. Have you seen that show Strange Angel at all?
I don't think so, no.
But it's about Crowley and Parsons, and you know that whole story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who hadn't watched it, close your ears, but this is a fantastic point, because you bring this up. Parsons was seeing Aleister Crowley in the United States. Like, they thought he was a British spy, and he's seeing the guy in his head, and this is just in the show, but it did make me think of that. So he got, Jack Parsons got psychologically evaluated to get a security clearance so he could build the rockets, because they don't want nutcases in there behind security, right? And they said, did you see Aleister Crowley? Because it turned out Aleister Crowley wasn't there physically, right? Mm-hmm. And he just leaned forward and said, look, I'm not crazy. I know the difference between reality. Well, the psychologist comes in there and tells him, he said, you're not crazy. You're just overworked or stressed. But then he called Crowley in England later. He said, have you been in my mind? He said, well, I'm the greatest magician in the world. Do you think I couldn't astral travel if I wanted to? And then he started dropping hints that he was doing it. But he was smart enough not to go around telling everybody he was astral traveling. That's my point.
Yep.
We've got to bring some of this stuff in slowly.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it's a blend. There's a continuum. There's not hard lines in these subjects, right? Because you can have an experience that is what I would call psychical, but come back with physical marks. And we kind of know that with hypnotism, even, right? That people have been hypnotized, and then you touch them with an ice cube, and they get burns because you've been told you're going to be touched with a hot ember. Right, and the body responds as though a burning hot coal has touched it, and they get a burn mark. So what is that? Right, we've got to think about that for a minute and think that the body is quite capable of manifesting injuries that are not real in terms of what we think of as real. right? That it will respond to what it thinks is happening. And so if you have a very vivid, say, a psychical experience where you are attacked and you get scratched, that you might wake up with scratches. And let's be honest, the paranormal study is full of those mysterious scratches and, people getting scratched by entities and stuff. So we have to be really careful because, some of that can be an external force acting on you, but some of it can be the mind manifesting itself. But most people wouldn't know that because they're not very well educated in the subject area of the human mind, consciousness, the things that we can do with the mind, right? So we have to be really careful. And that's why I say we need these experts, because they can help us to evaluate, is something happening in the brain when that happened, monitoring you or looking to see if you've got an anomalous brain structure. These are things that you can't do in your bedroom just by being an amateur researcher. I can't run a neurological trials on a group of contactees and non-contactees with controls. And I can't do it. Yeah, I'd love to, but I can't. So, I recognize that we need that because I think that we're seeing within the phenomena, and again, with abductions is an important one because obviously, I find it a fascinating subject. There's evidence that some of the people who claim to have had abductions with implants, that there was some work done scanning them with, trying to think of it, with obviously with sensing technologies, right?
Yeah,
and what they found was
or whatever.
They ran all these scans. And so what they found was, and again, they weren't particularly look at this, but what they found was that there seemed to be that there was a malfunction in the regions of the brain that deal with sensory input, particularly visual and auditory input. Yeah. Now, most of your world, in your head is visual and auditory input. Yeah, that's pretty much the story of what's going on. Unless obviously you have you're born with damage to those areas or whatever, and you're blind or something. But most of your input is coming through. So now let's say that something is wanting to hack into you. Now, whether it's the government or an alien race, but that someone is hacking into you with technology and wants to beam into you the experience of you being abducted. Yeah. Now, isn't it intriguing then to find that these people have damage to those areas, right? That there's something anomalous happening in those areas consistently across people with the same experience, saying that, well, I feel that I was abducted and I've had an implant. And we're actually finding there's something in that area of the brain. Now, I would really want to drill down in that. And I wouldn't say, because one temptation there would be people say, well, then they're just mental, they've got a problem and they're imagining it. But hang on a minute. Why are they all having the same experience? Because we damaged lots of people's brains in the same area, we wouldn't expect them to all vividly see, aliens come in, abduct them, put a chip in their head. That's a very strange reaction to any kind of problem, isn't it? Right. And so to get that uniformly across people, we have to step back and say, no, hang on a minute. We can't just say, well, they've got brain damage and they're seeing things, because they're not just seeing things. They're having the same immersive experience. Now, could it be instead that what we're seeing is the scars, right, of that process, the scars of the hacking, and that somebody or something is able to modify the inputs to our brain. Now, that should frighten people, right? Because if there is an external force able to do that basically can just plug in and give you a different reality for a bit and make you feel that, you're on an alien ship getting operated on, that is just as, I think, creepy and frightening, if not more so, than the idea that sometimes ships land and take you and do operations. I also wonder, I speculate about this in my upcoming book, Exogenesis, whether or not what we're seeing is maybe the pre-testing of people, that the first stage, by whatever force is behind that, may run the scenario in your brain to see how you respond before taking you physically, right? So it's like a pre-trials to then sort out which ones are keepers. Do you have an
example maybe that you can give us that makes you think of that? Maybe a case or something?
Well, let's think. There's...
I have no, like I told you during the break, we've got all this missing tax money and all these missing people. I have no doubt that people could be tested on. Everyone knows about the Facebook test, and this is just a corporation. It's not the military, it's not the government. They did a psychological test on people by showing certain things just to see how they reacted without our permission. And certain people committed suicide and stuff, So it's
certainly, look, the deep state would certainly want to have that kind of technology. Now, if they do, that should be very troubling for people. But also, equally, some kind of extraterrestrial or interdimensional group could also, be running those. So I'm not sort of saying that it must be humans doing that, right? That this hacking could be done by anyone. What we really want to know is, obviously, we definitely want to know who, but we definitely want to know how, right? And I would like to know a way to stop it, because let's say you're a person who's being plagued by those events.
Exactly.
Like, if there is some way of blocking that hacking, that surely should be a really important area of research, yeah? Because we now believe that there's probably, hundreds of thousands of people at least that have had these abduction experiences, probably millions. It's inferred by the fact, look, if we only know of thousands of cases, right, we can assume that for every case that becomes public, there's probably 10,000 that don't, right? Because how many people really want to come out with, oh, by the way, I get abducted by aliens at night? I mean, not many people are comfortable, are they, going on the record with that? So I think we can safely say it's the rare person who's brave enough to openly report a case like that. So I think for every one of those, you've probably got thousands that don't come forward. So that's a really important phenomenon to deal with, isn't it? So when you think there's and even from, say, a pharmaceutical kind of view, where they only do things to make money. But even from that, look, if there was a drug that you could inject into these people that would stop the brain from being able to be hacked into, right, or something, or it modifies the brain slightly so that you'll no longer have those experiences, I think a lot of those people would want it. So even if you're from that perspective, there should be research being done that, even for selfish reasons, like by pharmaceutical companies, if they understand this is a real problem, no matter where it's coming from, and that there might be a way to block it. How many of those people would take the blockers? Probably a lot of them. Not all, because some people have positive experiences, and that's up to them. Obviously, freedom of choice, yeah? But for the ones who find it horrific, I'm sure a lot of them say, well, look, I just want the tablet or the injection, So I think that these areas we really have to go down, because we have to understand that, it doesn't really matter in a way whether, for those people, it doesn't matter so much whether it's physical or interdimensional or psychological, that they just want it to stop, yeah? So that has to be a focus of research. I personally think that we're seeing a mixture. I think we are seeing a mixture of probably, physical phenomena, psychical phenomena. We're also probably seeing a mixture of some deep state weirdness, but also something else, which is whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional. I think that as with a lot of these topics, what you find is there's a lot of clumped phenomena. I know we've already talked about that we tend to have it all clustered together. And again, that's where I would break it down, and I would want to see which abductions fit this category, which ones seem to be really physical, which ones seem to be probably psychical, which ones have elements that suggest they're alien, really alien, and which ones seem to be a bit contrived and might be some kind of weird experiment by the deep state, and start to break it down.
Yeah, and man, I can't believe this. They're halfway through and I haven't even gotten to your Exodus stuff. Sorry, that's the thing. It's all right. It's not you. I like picking your brain. This is my fault. But we are halfway through this. I got to take a break. But you're right. I mean, if we want to be taken seriously, then we got to be smart about it. You want to invite academia into this realm so that you can figure these things out and stop the suffering of people that have these incidents that happen. Then you have to understand the human condition. Stop dropping all this ascension stuff on them.
Yeah, you can't say, because they're not all having a good time.
Right. We'll be right back. No, they're not.
Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
From the city of Chicago in the great Midwest, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, and here's our headlines. A truck driver shoots an upright canine near Reed City, Michigan. This report just came in at phantomsandmonsters.com. The story is as follows, as told by the nephew of the truck driver. He is a long-haul truck driver and was stopped on the side of the highway in a heavily wooded area. This was somewhere several miles in the middle of nowhere, but he said he was closest to Reed City, Michigan. I can't recall what he said he was doing, but he had to fix something before he could take off again. Also, he did not have a trailer on at the time. He had just got done fixing up his stuff and was about to climb back into the vehicle when he saw a deer come towards him from the tree line. He said it looked like it might have been running from something. He assumed it might have been a bear. He was just getting ready to leave when he suddenly sees something looking at him through the passenger side window. He described it as having jet black fur and bright yellow eyes, as well as a vicious-looking, snarling teeth. It was so close to him that he could see the fur blowing with the slight breeze that was coming through. The window was open, but it didn't seem to notice, as was evident when the creature put its paw up to the window as if to press on it against the window. But it pulled back in shock when it realized its paw actually entered the vehicle. My uncle typically carries a gun on him. At this time, he had a heavy revolver. He pointed it at the dogman and pulled the trigger, effectively shooting it directly in the face. Finally, the truck started moving fast enough for him to be confident that the thing wasn't following him in case it survived the shot. He didn't bother waiting around to find out. He said he still gets disturbed when he thinks back onto that event. He described it as giving off this aura of pure evil and intellect in only the few seconds that he faced it. He has nightmares about the creature to this day, and he refused to tell anyone about it until several years after it had happened, for fear of people thinking that he had lost his mind. Another reason I'm able to believe this story is that he's not interested in the occult, supernatural, paranormal, or cryptids, etc. He had no idea what to make of this thing. I told him to look into the Dogman. When he looked online, he said the artist's descriptions of the Dogman matched perfectly for what he saw that day. Again, posted at phantomsandmonsters.com. And so speaking of cryptids, that takes us nicely into this edition's Fun Fact. Madagascar was once the stopping ground for lemurs, but they happen to be the size of gorillas today. And that wraps it up for this edition of the Stranger Than Fiction News, right here on the Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Right, me old Chiners, I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Lighting the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of the fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Well, tonight we are here with Bruce Fenton, and I got to tell you, I could talk to this cat for hours and hours and hours. You know, I'm glad you got up early in the morning. You're not the only person from over that side of the pond that's gotten up early in the morning to talk to me, but I feel really privileged when you guys do that. I really do. Nobody likes waking up that early to talk to me. So I want to make what I'm talking about important, and obviously your books are gold, man. And which one do you think more people get into more? Is it the aliens or is it for the Forgotten Exodus books?
Definitely the aliens one. Yeah, I mean, obviously, even with the forward from Graham Hancock and stuff on Forgotten Exodus, it has a huge problem in that the target audience, which is largely, I would say, would be people with, not necessarily academics, but people with a fairly good knowledge of the subject, because it is written in a fairly scholarly way, but not academic level, I wouldn't say. Obviously, it's not like it's not a book for a university or something to learn from, but it has hit that problem that it doesn't quite hit the sweet spot, I suppose, with people in the alternative research field. And at the same time, the people in academia and stuff are quite against it because I'm talking about a paradigm change in what they do, right? So then they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to debate me. They don't even want to talk about the book. Like I had it discussed in an article, right, for Forbes, because I managed to find a journalist who was a scientist himself. He's trained in anthropology. He looked over my sort of case I sent him, and he said, well, it's definitely worth discussion. It should be something that people can debate. Scientists can always, refute your argument and have an argument with you about it. That's how science works, right? And so he didn't see a problem with it. So he wrote an article. He had it published in Forbes. Within hours, it had been deleted, and he was told never to refer to my work again. Right, so my work is heavily suppressed. Yeah, people wonder, the reality of that. The reality of it is it's heavily suppressed. I've communicated with many scientists, many academics. They do not discuss my work in public. None of them will even attack me in public, really, not for the actual content. I've had no one that's willing to engage me in a conversation. Scientific radio shows won't have me on. So I have a real problem there because, how do you put it out into the field then to be discussed if there is a wall of silence that you face, right? So I don't know. It's really difficult. I even had a leading academic in paleoanthropology who, when I contacted him, this is well over a year ago, I said, would you receive a copy of my book? This is basically the theory. He said, oh, yes, I've heard of your book. And I thought, right, well, if you've heard of it, basically the whole paleoanthropology community's heard of it, and none of you are talking about it, right? Not even to attack it. And you know that if it was silly season stuff, they would come straight out and say, well, there's this stupid book, full of errors, that's just total nonsense. But they won't say that because it will bring attention to the fact that pretty much most of what's in there is very solid. There's a few bits I would change now if I was rewriting it, but most of it's very solid. And I think that that's what's put them off. So therefore, I can't reach that audience. I can't get them talking. And the other side of it, the more fringe people, I think that perhaps it's a bit more academic than some would like.
Well, and that's why we would talk to people like John Anthony West, God rest his soul, but he was a warrior, man. And he would come out. Mm-hmm. He says a lot of the same thing. He reminds me a lot of you because even off the air, he would say a lot of the same things like, look, if I piss anybody off, good. They need to be pissed off. We need to start shaking stuff up because he understood the human condition. He understood that we're not smart enough to understand cause and effect. I mean, look, we've got people out there suffering from, I'll say it, psychic attacks, whatever you want to call it, demons, stuff like that. And they're not getting any help because we're out there touting about it in ways that, where we don't take people's experiences seriously. And in other ways where we get emotionally involved when we should be careful. If we were careful about what we say and how we approach certain things, I really believe this, that academia probably could get involved and you would have less people worried about their careers and stuff, and then those people could get some help. We'd figure it out.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got to recognize the community that since we're blocking progress as much as we're helping it, that it's, we've got to be wary of that because there are people that do need to be helped. And that doesn't denigrate them or anything. It's like, if I was having, I've gone through some really strange stuff. I've had a period in which the paranormal phenomena that I was experiencing was sort of horror movie levels, right? So what I did was I looked for help. Yeah, because you don't think, well, I just would like to be a case study in somebody's book one day. Christ, no. You want to have your life back, you want to have some normality. So, I mean, I looked for help. I was able to get help eventually. I was living in Ecuador at the time when most of the really hardcore stuff happened to me. Now, fortunately, down in South America, there's more access to sort of shamanic stuff, sorcery. That still exists, right? The old ways, the old healing systems and stuff, right? So if you're having those kind of esoteric problems, there are people who specialize in them, right? Obviously, that's a lot harder to find in Europe and the US. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, it does, but it's harder to find that help, right? So I was able to access shamanic healers and traditional healers, and I got helped with it, but I did have like a 10 months of really hardcore phenomena, everything from sudden illnesses where you would be, 1 minute you're fine, the next minute your core body temperatures drop to like near death, and you're shaking in your bed with blankets on and having to have healings done on me and stuff, and people seeing the person that was involved in it. There was someone who was actively involved, sending negative energies, what is called shamanic warfare, people call curses, whatever you want to call it. But people would see that person standing next to me, and they weren't even in the same country as me, right? So other people would objectively say, oh, I can see this woman standing next to you, with dark hair and all. So there's a point where people say, oh, have you gone mad? And it's like, well, if I have, then a lot of these people around me are mad too. And they're very good guessers because, they wouldn't know me, and they would be seeing this person, describing them, saying, yeah, look, this is the person involved in what's happening. And, I had so many clearings, healings, and all sorts of stuff. Eventually, it became tolerable. But I was lucky to have help with that. So I really empathize with people that are going through hardcore strangeness, whether it's in an alien sense, whether it's in a paranormal, there is also a bit paranormal, but whatever the sense of that is, I believe that getting them the right help should be one of the priorities of the community, not just, well, that'll make a nice story for my next book. I think that's a really heartless way of like looking at their cases.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to depend on science to fix these problems. Maybe it does take a shaman or a magician or sometimes, but I want everything to fix. Some of these people are suffering bad,
Mm-hmm.
So that's my whole point with this. If you want to know for real, then we need to start spreading some logic, especially when it comes to cause and effect, because even another effect that happens because of that is real researchers like Tim Doyle, others like we've had so many fall out because they're tired of it,
Mm-hmm. And again, we touched on a bit there, which is important as well. That I think the conversation should include the shamans and sorcerers and healers. And so, I'm not saying this is a thing where we just drop all these people and that they're all woo or so. Not at all, because these things work as well. There's stuff in there which is solid, and it is science in a way, but it's science that our scientists haven't caught up with, right? That we're starting to see week by week things that some of these old traditions have said for a long time. We're seeing them become agreed on in science, right? Like for example, it's long been said that there was like a jungle intelligence. The jungle was alive, it was connected, that all life communicated, that there was a web of life and all this stuff, right? Now they're recognizing, right, that there is in fact underground networks, these fungal networks, stuff, right? They connect all the plants and trees that communicate messages between them, right? That they help each other. That a tree, when it's attacked, it can tell other trees what's attacking it, and they can defend themselves, right? So that would have just sounded like loony stuff, wouldn't it? Like 20 years ago, shamanic, like looniness from primitive people, living forests that talk to each. And it's like, hang on a minute. We found that that's objectively true. Right. So at what point do we then say, well, hang on, I think some of these ancient traditions, they actually know what they're talking about. So again, I would include those people in. I'm not saying that it's all that we have to cut out all of that stuff, and it's all woo. It's not. There's a lot of great information in there. It needs to pair, the two halves. We need to sort of bring back I guess you call the metaphysical, spiritual, with these kind of the hard sciences, so they can collaboratively examine phenomena as well. That I would definitely want those people
to come in. We're a long ways away from that, my friend. It does feel that way, doesn't it?
It does, but again, it shouldn't be. And I do think that we know that there are research projects that look at some of this. Obviously, ions and people that they do work with shamans and healers and stuff to see what is happening there to try and understand it. So that's another area where, at least that's kind of happening. In the psychic field, there is research. There is scientists that are willing to do trials on telepathy and stuff. So I mean that at least has got started. So I mean we need to sort of bring that to bear on some of these other topics. But I guess at this point, should I dive into some other?
Yeah, I was going to ask you in the idea of, you know, aliens and hybrid humans, looking into that, and then let's say we get past that and we go down the timeline of human evolution, right? We take in that theory, we do human evolution, and you look at that whole scholastic subject of that. Between those two things, when you've done your research, out of all the research you've done, which you've done quite a bit, what do you think is the most profound thing that we've gotten wrong about all of this?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing, I mean, it has to be that the fact that we already have, in my view, the evidence of alien contact. You know, we already have it, that there's an objective scientific source for this idea that we've kind of missed. And I think that probably is one of the most, because of course, you know, people are still looking, you know, they're all looking like, where's the evidence of aliens? You know, are they out there? Is it with a telescope, whether it's with a telescope, whether it's with someone in a, you know, trance looking for, or whether, you know, looking up at the sky for UFOs. So for me, I suppose, yeah, the bit that really gets me is that to find that, you know, there's already scientific evidence that can be objectively looked at, which points to an alien visitation to this planet, right? And yet we're all waiting for just, you know, say most people who are interested in these things are waiting for a disclosure from the government and from the military to tell them, are aliens real? But then for me, it's like, well, I've had that, thanks, done, right? But people don't necessarily want to hear it from me. They still would rather hear it from, you know, somebody coming out from, I guess, you know, some deep state project and saying, listen up, people, you know, it's all true. There are aliens. You know, here's a picture of a spaceship. You know, it turns out it's real. And then be left with the idea, well, was that a psyop? Was that disinfo? I mean, so I don't know. I find it's a problematic way of going back when the evidence is already there. So, I mean, for me, that's the profound bit, is that it's already available to people, but that's not what they want. And they don't expect it to come from someone like me, right? Or in collaboration with what I would say is the phenomena itself with these entities. Because, I mean, to be honest, my project couldn't exist really without a transmission that I say has come from those entities.
Well, I understand.
Right? Yeah, so I mean, look, they have done they've done their own very weird, obtuse form of disclosure. And why wouldn't it be weird and obtuse? They're aliens, right? Why should it be that they just land, they make a public announcement? No, they've gone about it in a super weird, almost incomprehensibly strange way because they're aliens.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. I had the same thing happen. I had listeners say, well, you went on other shows and you talked about the occult and you knew so much, but you don't do that on your show. And it's because I'm no cause and effect. I mean, obviously there are some people that don't want, they don't care what other people think, but for human empowerment purposes, I want to hear everyone's story. So more people start listening. So more people start taking it seriously. I can't do that if I go out spouting that, you know, everything about magic is real, and you know what I'm saying. You get. I hope everybody gets it by now.
Yeah, we have to have a bit of a filter in it. You know, there has to be a bit of a filter that we can say, well, that bit I think maybe is not really worth covering, or you know, it's not going to do any good to just rant on about it. And then we have to know. I mean, it doesn't mean that we couldn't be sitting in a house, you know, with your friends and have a rant about it and have a chat or an argument about something that's a bit more over the edge, you know what I mean? But yeah, for when you're putting stuff out there, radio, books, and obviously you want it to be some kind of level of filter and critical review on it, and you know that when you come to an end product of content that you're putting out, that it's kind of the core of the subject, you know, hitting that sweet spot. So I mean, that's what we try to do, isn't it? You know, but it doesn't mean that we're trying to limit the discussion. Of course,
right.
People can in their own homes talk about whatever they want, and obviously they can go beyond the things that you and I are talking about. These feed into other subjects, and then they can obviously go off and have a broader discussion. You know, we're just giving them the core thinking points, but they can certainly build on those and think outside the box into other areas, you know.
And I could be wrong about these things. I could totally be wrong too, you know, that's why I ask everybody's experience, no matter what they know, no matter their education level. I've had guests that just don't share their experiences, and I will pry to try to get it out of them, because there's a lot of truth there, you know, but then people are like, oh, Joe's anti-scientific. And I start getting categorized. I'm sure you've experienced that too. No, I want science here too. You know?
Yep.
Same thing.
Yeah, we want both. It should be open to people that are not obviously academics, but involving them, you know, and it's not this kind of split that we've had for a long time. The same as way that we've had a split between spirituality and science for a long time. And obviously some scientists are trying to bring that back together, because the reality is, you know, surveys have shown that more scientists who were surveyed came out with the answer that they had some kind of spirituality than didn't, right? So for a lot of people, that doesn't match what they would imagine. They think, you know, that it's all atheists, you know, all these guys, they don't believe in any sort of, you know, strangeness. And that's not actually true. Just because their jobs function like that, outside of work, most of those people consider themselves to be in some way spiritual. Now, whether they're openly, you know, Muslim, Christian or whatever, or just feel that there is something higher that, you know, guides the universe, but they just won't necessarily bring that into their work, right? But we should be careful of assuming that means that there's just this hard break between science and spirituality. It's not. You know, a lot of these scientists have their own spiritual views and would also have, you know, metaphysical views. Certainly Christian scientists, Islamic scientists, you know, obviously a lot of them believe in very strange things, you know, so they're implicit in those religious systems, right? So there's not a hard line. And I think sometimes the media has given us that idea that there is, but the reality on the ground isn't. You know, you meet a scientist and you talk to him in the pub, and if you got onto those subjects, a lot of the time they would probably be like, yeah, you know, I believe that there's, you know, something else, or that I believe in whatever, you know, some strange aspect of reality, you know? So I mean, that's the thing people should keep in mind, is it's not quite as clear cut as sometimes we get the impression from the media. So, you know, we get spinned, basically. But yeah. So, I mean, I guess, come back to what you said, but yeah, really for me, the most profound thing really is this evidence that, there's always been some evidence there, I guess, that ET have been here. So that's one of my thing that's been the big one.
Well, I'm wondering why you wrote into Africa. Was it really to tell us the alternative history there, or was it you know what I'm saying? Like, were you, let me tell this story first so they'll look deeper?
In a way, yeah. Look, when I was writing it, I already was aware of this other narrative about the modification of humans. You know, it's not mentioned in there, but obviously there's some key tie-ins. You know, the location where I put this happening, you know, that the Homo sapiens emerged in Australia, and also the date, you know, that I put in there is 780,000 years ago. Those obviously tie back in, because obviously, you know, I say that the creation event, if in the other book I discussed, the creation event happens in Australia 780,000 years ago. So the books, you know, they do tie in, just because I don't specifically say that. You know, that really you could say that if you were to, usually I'd say people to read Forgotten Exodus first, but in terms of a linear reading, you probably would go for Hybrid Humans first, or obviously the new book Exogenesis, which is going to be an expansion of this topic, but then go on to Forgotten Exodus, because really it's almost like, well, what happened afterwards, you know? And then that's the human story continues with the migrations and stuff. But so really the ET narrative would come first, but that book sort of came out of something else. I mean, I was actually involved I was living in Ecuador, right, and I got involved with a megalithic complex out in the Yanganatis, which is a national park there, a huge jungle region. It was one of these strange things. I'd only been in Ecuador for I think a couple of months. I ended up at a meeting with a shaman, because of the problems I was having, actually, to do with that paranormal problems, you know, the strange tie-ins. That led me to be in this meeting. The person had said, is it okay, we're going to be meeting with someone else that day, can you come along, we'll have a coffee, you know, the group of us. And we did that. And it turned out the other couple that was there, the guy had just come back from an expedition into the jungle where they had found this megalithic site, and he was saying it's a city of giants, right? So I just had to be probably the only English-speaking researcher probably in 1,000 miles, and I just happened to be right there at this meeting with this guy. So that obviously, so that took me into that, and I became involved in that. I put out a few articles. If people look for, say, the Lost City of Giants, Ecuador, they'll find some articles. It got into some mainstream press, I think even RT Spanish, and then later on the Science Channel, when they had me on for something else, which to do with the Georgian giants, they also showed some of my footage from Ecuador. But that became quite a big story. So in the case of researching that, trying to understand who built this megalith, what did it connect to? What was the backstory? What I found was that there was connections to a people called the Lagoa Santa, and the Lagoa Santa are a population that lived down mainly in Brazil, And it now looks like they lived there 40, 50, 60,000 years ago, right? So way too early in that story of the colonization of the Americas. And on top of that, they seem to be Australoid, i.e. they are Australasian Aboriginal people. Yeah, so like what the hell are they doing there in Brazil like 50,000 years ago? So that opened a whole load of anomalies. And then to resolve that, I had to start looking into obviously Australia and obviously the recent out of Africa models to try to understand this situation. And that's what led me into a deep dive into the what became the Forgotten Exodus, but into the recent out of Africa story, and it's linked to Australia and the Aboriginals. So that's actually how that came about. And then in that process also I became connected with a lady called Valerie Barrow, and this is because I was also collaborating with two Australian researchers, Stephen and Evan Strong, who had this belief that Homo sapiens had started in Australia. They have quite a few articles on it, but what I found that they didn't have was a singular theory, a scientific theory. Now, when people talk about theories in the pub, right, it's very different to a scientific theory, because I just want to clarify that, because what we call theories in the public would be called hypothesis in academia, right? So there was a hypothesis that had happened, but what there wasn't was a detailed theory. So I set out to formulate that. And so by going through all the academic literature, I was able to put together what I consider to be a strong theory for the start of Homo sapiens and the migrating out into the world. And so that's all referenced with academic papers and all the rest of it. So that's how that book came about. And alongside it, I became connected to someone they knew, which is this lady, Valerie Barrow, who had the book Alteringa, When the First Ancestors Were Created, in which is this contact event she had with an artifact which was talking to her. Now, that sounds super weird, but then in the modern age, we now know that voice-to-skull technologies, as well as obviously psychic phenomena, but voice-to-skull technologies are being worked on in leading universities. So an object with its own consciousness, i.e. sounds a bit like a hard AI to me, right, that can talk to you and it's got voice-to-skull, is no longer woo-woo. Right, so the problem is that a lot of people are not very, I don't see them in a mean way, but a lot of people are not very well educated, into these kind of topics. So I don't think that's unfair to say, because most people are very busy with their lives, and they've got their own focuses, and they're very well educated in what they know and what they do. Yeah, but they're not in these other stranger topics, perhaps, or in the cutting edges of technology.
Right.
Now, that's one of the problems I have with the book.
Right. Well, I want to dive more into this. I've got some questions about what you just said. Yeah. You said human to skull technology. Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit. But the show is live as well, because you can hear those damn crickets. And so what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes is they're either going to get out, or we're going to turn this shack, into a bait shop. We'll be right back.
This is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the cost, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Ahoy there. Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Ship Happens.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma's all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. Non-GMO and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market. AncientLifeOil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person. You. AncientLifeOil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. AncientLifeOil.com.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
You're listening to The Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on The Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours. And welcome back. You are listening to Lighting the Void with your host, Joseph Roop.
Oh, I apologize, folks. I do love live radio. But when you have live radio, as I'm talking right now, I believe it's the 29th or the 30th, wherever you are. We're here with Bruce Fenton. Things happen, and I hear people say that they have, we're calling from a shack or some crazy, insane, remote place, when I say that we're broadcasting out of a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Arkansas, I'm not playing, and it's happening right now. And these crickets, when they get here, they're destroying. Crickets are very calming. They're very meditative, right? But when you're trying to do a show, it makes you want to pull your hair out. Makes me want to jam my finger in my ear. So hopefully I've gotten rid of it, but it's starting to get a little too freaky, like some type of Hitchcock film. And I have to apologize, Fenton. Bruce, I call you Fenton like if we were on a football team or something. But I have to apologize to you, brother, because it's just starting to freak me out a bit.
Maybe you should be freaked out, because back in 2017, there was a purported sonic attack on government employees in the U.S. Embassy in Havana. And the researchers had a look into it, and they came to the conclusion that what they had heard was, in fact, the song of the Indies short-tailed cricket, right? And these people had claimed to have headaches, nausea, this, strange ongoing noise. And so they ran this experiment to see which, what could be the source. They even evaluated a few different kinds of crickets and other animals. And they actually included, so it was the Indies short-tailed cricket. But the funny thing is, a few days ago, it came out that 40 of these people have got brain damage. So you might want to be careful.
Fantastic.
So
my neighbors live far away, but I'm gonna be pissing them off tonight, because this place is getting, I don't know where they came. First it was one, then it was another. You couldn't really hear them on the show, and now right about this time at night, they swarm me, and I feel like they're in my head, and I can't get them out. Man. It's making me mad, for real.
Maybe it's something to it. I mean, I found that the day after I posted on Twitter about this subject, about these, sonic attacks, we actually had a strange sonic incident. Basically, the next day, 6 a.m., this high-pitched tone was just playing. Outside you could hear it really loud. In the house you could still hear it. And I wasn't even sure if it was just, our house, our street, or what. But it turned out that, in fact, the whole town had been hearing it, and it was like all day. And that was literally the day after I talked about these mysterious, sonic attacks that happen around the world. And so, I don't know, you've got to be, a bit paranoid sometimes with these things. So who knows, crickets or something else.
It's like he's mocking me or something. I don't know. Anyways, people are going to start thinking I'm crazy. But back to your point, I got to look into that. Actually, that's insane. But back to your point about, so my son goes to school. This is my whole point. See, I can't even think straight. My whole point is he's going to school and learning a narrative about history, and it's not correct. You see what I'm saying? It's not correct.
Yep. We have a massive problem. I mean, look, there's for anyone that really wants to get to grips with why paradigms change so slowly or resist change, I really advise that they check out Thomas Kuhn and his structure of scientific revolutions kind of work, right? The guy's genius. Like, he figured out that really it doesn't, the way we think science works, progressing along, you find some new data, it adapts, it changes. Well, that's partly true, but what he found is really for what we call like revolutions, it doesn't really work like that, because the scientists get used to being in what's called normal science, which is where the overall model that they're working in functions to answer most of the questions they're addressing, right? But what happens is slowly you will accrue anomalies, yeah? So if the model is not completely right, and most models won't be, because of course things change. So they start to accrue anomalies. And when you get enough anomalies, the field will go into a kind of basically no longer in normal science. Yeah? It starts to be, it's falling apart a bit. And then you go into kind of a revolution stage where literally the model is imploding because there's so many anomalies that can't be explained by the working model. But then, instead of it just changing, the forces of human beings kick in. And what you'll find is that the people are highly resistant to change because they're so used to working in that. Like, you've got to think they've made their names in it. They're still teaching the subject to people on, Monday to Friday. They've made a big name for themselves. So they have vested self-interest in the model itself, right? And then on top of that, they maybe have weaved it into their own lives. So they're very comfortable. They're telling, things happen like this. It works like this. So suddenly their identity is also tied in it. So if someone's got their money tied into something, their identity, their career, right, suddenly that person has a vested interest in things not changing. Yeah. And so you end up with these problems. And this can happen even in science or in society. And that's when you get revolutions. Yeah, because revolutions basically are paradigm changes. Sometimes they're really bloody. Yeah. Other times they're just very difficult, and they take time. They take coercion. You know, you almost have to get the person to see what's in it for me to change. Yeah. And let's say it's not happening the way people imagine with science, just saying, oh, yes, you know, that's right, we better move on. And in fact, Kuhn explains that it's very difficult for two people that are in different scientific paradigms to even talk to each other. They'll be talking past each other because they're both starting off from completely different foundations, right? And then trying to have a conversation. He said that's exactly what you see in the fringe. You'll see that the scientists are in one paradigm, and a lot of these researchers are in another, and they try and have a conversation, and they're just talking past each other, right? So understanding Kuhn's work, I think, is a great starting point for people that want these fields to move forward, because you start to realize this is not going to just change because we've got better evidence. Like he said that's almost never happens in science. He said it's not a paradigm. You can change a model with that, but when you come to changing the whole paradigm, he said it's rare that it changes because someone's got the best evidence and they convince the other person. It's usually to do with self-interest, or those people die off, and more people that believe something else, you know, are born or whatever, and that's where the paradigms change. And that's kind of what we're seeing now. We're in the revolution stage, right, with a lot of scientific fields and in these subjects that we're dealing with. And what's happening is it's changing by itself to a degree. Because look, if you do the surveys, something like 50%, I know there's a really high percentage of people believe that ancient aliens visited Earth. Something like, I think it's like 40% of the people in the US or something like that, right? So millions and millions of people. So the paradigm is changing. Right, and that's not necessarily about loads of great evidence. That's about things in the media and stuff, and just word of mouth. You know, obviously Ancient Aliens TV shows and movies. Yeah, so things are changing, and there's a point where there'll be so many people believe that a newspaper won't be able to publish a story saying it's ridiculous, because their readers will tell them, well, we don't want to read your newspaper anymore because, you know, we all believe it, so you're garbage. They won't even buy it, right? So it becomes a vested self-interest for that newspaper to say, well, ancient aliens are real, obviously, because they want to sell newspapers, right? So you can see that the paradigms don't always change the way people think.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I know why you were laughing in the background. So I totally agree with you on that. And, I just wanted to, I have a hard time with the giants things and stuff, you know, I don't know about the evidence. Like when Graham Hancock did his new book about Into America or whatever, we've been talking about that stuff for a long time, but this is my whole point of this kind of show too, is now that he's done a book about this, it's starting to be taken more seriously. Well, what kind of things are here? You know, like the rock wall in Texas and stuff. Have you looked into that as far as the United States or America is concerned?
I've read his new book, and, you know, I do follow some of the stuff that's going on over there, yeah, with the megaliths and evidence in the US. I mean, a giant subject, yeah, I'm not so convinced of. It depends what we call giants. Again, this is one of these relative subjects where, I know you're going back around to a theme, but, you know, the bunching stuff. Because what is a giant? You know, because some people would say a giant is someone who's, you know, 6 foot something, right? Because look, if you're a population of people who are typically 5 feet tall, right, and there's a guy who's say 6.5, 7 foot tall, yeah, he looks like a giant, doesn't he, compared to the other people. But that doesn't mean that he's like a wackadoodle-doo kind of woo-woo sized, entity. He's just a very tall person, right?
He's an ancient alien Nephilim from planet Xenon.
Well, yeah, defaults to being a Nephilim. But, I mean, it shouldn't work like that. We should be able to say, well, look, maybe these people encountered a group which was, on average, considerably taller than them, and therefore they said, well, we encountered giants. So, I mean, but then there's other people that say when they're talking about giants, what they mean is like mile-high giants that have left these, you know, mountains as their bones, and like these, you know, these giant tree stumps, you know, are these volcanic protrusions really, but they say giant tree stumps. So, I mean, look, again, we have those problems, don't we, where there's subjects get stuck together, because like what I would consider to be giants, I think the more reasonable thing is that, yeah, there were people sometimes that were 7 foot or more. And some of those people may have been in some way weird, you know, alien hybrids or something. But I don't think that I'm talking about beings that were like 5 meters tall or something, you know, more like, you know, out of Jack and Nori or, you know, I just think that, yeah, we've got to be careful of bunching stuff together, because, you know, I don't think that there were really, you know, beings that were like 5 meters tall and stuff. But I do think there was probably populations that were on average taller, and they might have had the genetic anomalies, whether that were natural or unnatural from some sort of meddling, But yeah, I'm very wary of the giant subject because, of course, it has absorbed the Nephilim stuff, and it has absorbed, mile-high giants, and it's a real range of stuff that's being bunched together. And some of it's, like, to me, is totally unreasonable, and some of it is quite rational.
They've gotten closer to me, Bruce.
I can hear them a bit. Yeah.
Instead of running away, they're getting closer. This has got to be. See, this is why I believe in magic sometimes, because I do feel like I'm in a Hitchcock film right now, and I'm talking to Bruce Fenton. And it's 5 o'clock in the morning. We are,
Yeah, we attract the stuff. Like I said, that the tone thing the next day after I talked about sonic attack. So, I do think, sometimes the weirdness clusters in on us as we look at it. What's that? I think if you look into the void, it looks back at you. The more you tackle these subjects, the stranger and, more uncomfortable things happen to you, I've
got 2 pop filters on the mic right now trying to bleed this stuff out, and it ain't working. But it doesn't matter. That's why it only comes through when I talk. But
what aspect of my research then did you like to do a quick time? I know you're not loads of time. But.
Well, we don't have. We only got like 30 more minutes. But it's more to me like that was one of the biggest things I wanted to talk to you about was how we look at things and cause and effect and what that does, so we can take on researchers' information better. Like you were expressing a while ago, the scientific community hasn't accepted you. Even your, the regular researcher where you're looking into this, they're not going to. That was my biggest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if anything, I'd hope that one of the biggest contributions I can do to the field of fringe research is to point out to people that we do need this kind of revolution within that field, and also that more structure. That it's great that everyone calls himself a community, but there's so many ideas in that melting pot that are getting mixed and mishmashed and put under one cover or title that it's not helpful in the end. And like we touched on as well, there's people that could really do with help and they're not getting help. They're just absorbed into that mass of the community, whereas really what they're actually after is perhaps some sort of leverment of problems that they're having. And so I'm hoping that I can get across to people that that we need a revolution in the fringe just as much as the academic subjects need revolutions as well, and that some of those are happening. Obviously there's revolutions at the moment in physics. There's objects that seem to go at 20,000 miles an hour through the sky and do hard turns. Obviously that questions our understanding of propulsion and physics and stuff. There's revolutions, as I say, in human origins that have to happen because even in the academic areas, people can probably see in the last couple of years there's been a creep through of stories that keep saying, oh, we have to rethink human evolution again, because they found the other week they found they identified a 210,000-year-old Homo sapiens skull in Greece, right? Now that doesn't fit with the narrative that we just came out of Africa 70,000 years ago, or even 120,000 years ago, which they'd stretched it back to already because of other finds, right? So those kind of things.
Isn't their theory though, because didn't it have something to do with? If could be wrong about this, but it had something to do with the body, the structure of the body was closer to the older. I guess I'm trying to think of all the different Cro-Magnon man or something. So they would look at people from from Africa and say, well, this had to be where we spawned from. I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, one of the things we had when the problem is, look, when the model, once upon a time there was out of Asia was the main model, okay? And then if you go back to, it's only a few decades ago that this changed, as evidence began to stack up in Africa. And then there was some DNA work done by a couple of scientists, Wilson and Kahn, who came up with the African Eve model and all that, back in the sort of the 80s. And then it flipped across to out of Africa, right? So these paradigms do change. That was a serious shift. But then now what they're finding is that actually there's an awful lot of evidence down in Asia. But why is it centered on Africa? The reason is because in certain environments, you're more likely to get fossils preserved, right? And what they found in places like the Rift Valley and stuff, the geology there allows for fossilization of these skeletons and stuff, and easier finds. So you get a lot of scientists who want to make a career for themselves. Where are you going to look? Are you going to look somewhere easy to find a great discovery, or are you going to head off to somewhere where you don't know if there's anything there and start digging? And traditionally people have headed towards these areas where they know, well, there's a good chance that we'll invest the money, we'll find a new skeleton, we'll make it, we'll have a paper, we'll get new funding. And they've done that. But now that people are starting to look more in Asia, they're finding actually, Christ, there's loads of radical, anomalous skeletons turning up, right? And they're finding that there's Homo sapiens skeletons in China that go back 260,000 years. Actually, there's one that's 300,000 years old, which is basically contemporary with the oldest accepted Homo sapiens up in Morocco. And even then, Morocco, I'm dubious about that because Morocco is so close to Spain, right? That, there's a short water crossing that we don't really know if those people came across Spain, right? Because for a long time, people were against the idea that early Homo sapiens could move around on watercraft. But we now know that they did, yeah? There's finds in Crete, where there's evidence of hominins moving around very early on watercraft. There's finds on Socotra, which is an island off the coast of southern Africa, and those finds go back about 700,000 years, according to the Russian team that was there, maybe 1 million years. I think 500,000 to 1 million years, right? So if these early people could sail, that really changes a lot of this story. Again, because we like orderly models, but this isn't orderly. Once you throw in boats, yeah, people can go wherever they want, whenever they want, right? You no longer have barriers, yeah, because you can just sail between Africa and Spain.
Are you saying we skipped basic logic? And that's what I'm hearing here, that we've skipped
when you put in an assumption, because we have. If you put in a wrong assumption, the whole system breaks. It's garbage in, garbage out. Right, and we've done that in a lot of these scientific models where they've put in a fixed assumption that the first humans to sail, right, were 60,000 years ago, roughly, were people down in Southeast Asia that sailed into Australia. That's been an assumption for decades. But now they're finding evidence on islands that could only be reached by boats, yeah, and that they're really old. Even Flores, where they found the Hobbit people, right, that there's fossil evidence there goes back 1 million years, right? You can only reach it by crossing ocean several times. Yeah, and there's really powerful currents that go flowing through the Indonesian islands, right? So you can't just swim across, and there's also sharks and all sorts of problems. So you either have to have watercraft, yeah, or, as some of the scientists are saying, or you can be washed out by a tsunami and somehow carried on debris to one of these islands. But that requires several different tsunamis carrying large numbers of people to islands. It's totally unreasonable, right? And then what they don't want to admit is, well, there's more likely that they've got boats, yeah, and that they're sailing between islands 1 million years ago. Because if you get to that, then you're saying, well, from 1 million years onwards, humans could sail to places. And how do we map it, saying these people are just coming out of Africa and moving to here? If they could be sailing around, they can go wherever they want, right, whenever they want. So it suddenly becomes a very hard subject to deal with, and that's a very disorderly paradigm shift, because all of your models then have to be re-questioned and say, well, that guy got there. Maybe he didn't walk 50,000 miles all around the coast, and so maybe he just sailed across that river over there, and it took him like an hour, So those are massive shifts that totally destroy paradigms when you look at your assumptions and realize that you've put a big assumption in that was totally wrong, and that applies to all fields. And I think that's what we've done in like the UFO topics as well and stuff. Like I said, if you put the assumption all UFOs are alien spaceships, and they're not, then you've put a massive assumption. Whereas if it turns out some are plasma energies, some are life forms, they're extremophiles, some are maybe alien spaceships, and then of course human technologies that are mistaken for alien spaceships. Once you start dividing it like that, you realize that your formative assumption has made your whole field garbage, right? And so that exists both in academia and in the fringe, that it's our assumptions that we have to look really, really carefully at, because they can make a nonsense of the whole model.
God bless you, man. I'm glad that you can talk like this right now. Really, I am, because I'm going crazy over here, Bruce. This is one of those times in radio where you don't know what to do. I'm serious.
I understand. Yeah, no, I will. I mean, I'm quite happy to do most of the talking, because I realize that, anytime you come on, you've got the crickets. So if you throw a question, I've got a little bit of a temper sometimes, and I've pulled the fader down. I was listening to everything you were saying, I promise you. And I managed to destroy this entire back room here, and they're still chirping away. So, can you do something? Can you call? Do you know a shaman, maybe, by any chance? Well, my wife actually is a shaman, actually. Yeah,
Daniela?
Yeah. She's she learned most of. Well, she was always psychic and she was always a medium and stuff. But when we were in Ecuador, she kind of developed the shamanic healing systems there from the people there. We had a few friends that were even healers, sorcerers, shamans, and stuff. So she ended up developing that. And she actually has a license to practice as a shaman in Peru, like, funnily enough. So she has legal qualifications in it. And it's a bit weird, but in Ecuador and Peru, you need to have a license to actually practice. So that might sound really like a weird thing for people in.
What, are you going to send me a bill or something? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, I should get a contractor in for you and ask the crickets to leave you alone.
Tell her Joe's got a cricket problem.
Make a deal with the spirit of the crickets and say, look, we'll feed you some leaves or something, or I don't know. Please just leave me alone.
We only got a few minutes left with you, man. So if you guys want to ask Bruce any questions, I'll look in the Fringe FM chat. Also, you can call in too if you want. It's 1-800-588-0335, and we'll be right back. Also, check out the website for reference, brucefenton.info. That's the site you want to look at. We'll be right back.
Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now, this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. They say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Greetings, galactic community. This is Suzanne Ross, host of Sci-Spy Radio, every Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. Join me for this brand new show featuring a revolutionary new genre, Sci-Spy, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Together, scientific discovery and spiritual revelation reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Tune in to Sci-Spy Radio every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific and discover the truth for yourself at thefringe.fm.
You know, food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Tonight, we're here with Bruce Fenton. And don't forget the show is here for you, Lighting the Void, 9 p.m. to midnight every single night, except the weekends. And then after the show will be The Secret Teachings with Brian Gable. Bruce, we only got you for just a little bit longer, so I'm curious as to where your research and where your writings are going next and what you're really looking into.
Yeah, there's a couple of different angles. I mean, I've got the new book, Exogenesis, which will be coming out, I think, early 2020 with a US publisher. I mean, obviously the previous two books were self-published, partly because I wanted them to be out quickly. But I recognize that having professional editing and a professional production team, you know, it does matter. It does help, you know, even though it does slow down the process. So the next one will be coming out through those kind of channels, right? In there, it expands on this investigation into the evidence of ancient alien contact and genetic manipulation, but also I tackle, SETI and the failure of academia to really engage and like why that is, some of why that is, which we've tackled, and also the abduction phenomena. I go a bit into that, and again, some of what we've discussed about the fact that it's a bit of a blend, I think, of physical and non-physical. And also, I do talk about TTSA, you know, what was happening with that initiative, how that's changing the media. So they're going to find, you know, it's a bit of a different book to Hybrid Humans, which was, you know, it just certainly introduces them to the topic, but they're going to find that Exogenesis is much more of a deep dive. It's a bigger book, you know, it's significantly longer as well. But yeah, it covers all of that and obviously strange and other strange elements. So I hope people will appreciate that. And I'm hopeful that, that it will actually make waves, and that also that it will connect some scientists in who it gives them something tangible to look at. Because I talk about how I now suspect the artifact, which is at the heart of the story, you know, this object which had the voice to skull technologies, if you like, but this seems to be a conscious object, right? I argue that this may be some kind of Bracewell probe. Now, Bracewell was a scientist who theorized that maybe aliens might send out like vast numbers of artificial intelligent probes across the cosmos, to planets that they thought would either be inhabited or would one day be inhabitable. And those would act as sentinels, monitoring the planets until such time as there was life or, intelligent life. And then they could activate, they record all the information, send it back, and possibly be programmed to make contact. So when you think of that, and you look at this narrative that I'm dealing with, this object which in this time of technological progression has made contact, wants the information to go out there to us, that there's this alien race, that it was connected to us, that we've got this whole lost history. These are actually concepts in science, right? In NASA, that they say these Bracewell probes may be out there, maybe sentinels in our solar system. I'm saying, well, look, yes, we found one. The Aboriginal people found one, and it's became known as an Alcharinga being and stuff. And that, you look at their mythology, it's in there. They're saying that there was these intelligences that were there at the beginning of creation, and that these Alcharingas, and that now this one is kind of getting its message across and has made contact. But will humanity recognize it? I'm not sure. So I'm hoping that some of the scientists will look at that and say, hang on a minute, this isn't actually woo-woo. This is stuff we talk about, and again, the modification of DNA that I talk about. This is something the SETI post-detection team talk about. They say, look, one way we might find evidence of an ancient alien contact event is it's possible that a civilization passed through this solar system once, and that they maybe chopped up meteorites for mining, used nuclear materials, left a trail of that, or edited some genetics, here, and that could leave a kind of a message in a bottle for us for millions of years. And that what they should look for is radical changes in highly conserved areas of like non-coding DNA, because that would be there for a very long time and would be a kind of a red flag, right? And I say, well, that's exactly what we have, and that's what I've identified, right? So these are things that NASA and SETI talk about, but they don't seem to be identifying. And I'm saying, well, look, we have them, right? So that's where that book will go. It will go more into what I hope is a door opening for the scientists to come in and say, well, cripes, he's actually got stuff we can tackle, not just stuff that we have to write off as woo. That's one major thing that's coming up. I also will be writing more on in the Forgotten Exodus series, another book dealing with the origins of the first people into America, and more to do with the early migrations, including what we think of as Atlantis, but basically a civilization that existed 12,000, 13,000 years ago that fell during the rising sea levels, not necessarily called Atlantis. I mean, that's a name that's popularized, but something like that there was evidence there was a civilization down in Southeast Asia that was eradicated, and that it was a maritime culture, and that its ships took it to other places. So that will also be in there. That's the next book.
Man, well, I hope you don't ever quit writing about this stuff, man. I really don't. I don't want you to stop. And is there any researchers that you're looking into that you think, other than yourself, we should be reading besides what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I suppose there's so many people whose work that I've appreciated. I mean, it's, to get to the point where I'm at, I've looked at a lot of other people's work. So I don't know who I would absolutely highlight at the moment, other than that. Yeah, let me try to think. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, to then choose out of all the influences you've had, or the people that are doing great work, to say, this guy. That's a difficult. You put me on a difficult one there.
I'm trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Here. My point is that your work is pretty significant, right? Earlier you were talking about, that you're not an academic. You don't have all these toys, or you're not a scientific. You don't have all these toys, all this stuff.
No.
But again, I'll say that people like you, John Anthony West, and others. I mean, John Anthony West was a satirist. But I mean, for heaven's sake, he wasn't really an academic per se, but he got people's attention enough. And you've got a little bit, just as much education as he does, if you ask me, when it comes to these things. So, you ever think about giving tours? That'd be cool. The Bruce Fenton tour.
I have thought about it. Yes, there's a lot of ancient sites here in the UK that I have thought about taking people too, and combining in my wife's knowledge and experience with the shamanic element to maybe do something like, transformative tours to sites that people wouldn't really know. Because my home county of Gloucestershire, we've got a lot of megaliths that are really cool, but aren't so well known as the ones in Wiltshire. Obviously Stonehenge and Silbury and stuff are the classics that people always come to here. But Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire and some of the other counties in the southwest, we also have some really cool sites. And I do have some insights into what some of these places were. That in fact, some places that are considered to be burial mounds were temples of initiation and transformation. So I would like to do some tours of that, and obviously I can give presentations on my research and let people know the connections to interdimensional and otherworldly topics as well. So I am thinking about that, and I think that I'll certainly keep people posted. And just one other thing, one researcher I will highlight, actually, when you say was there anyone else, is there is one, Anthony Peake, who I really appreciate his work in understanding the nature of anomalous phenomena, the inner workings of consciousness.
What you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. He's definitely up there as one of my favorites. And he's not had due credit and media recognition, even though when his work is kind of featured, basically a lot of his stuff has appeared as almost the themes of Black Mirror, right? That series,
right?
And people keep saying to him, "Look, you should watch this show. It looks like it's straight out of your books." And maybe it is, because one of the things that I understand is that sometimes things do get taken. Like I've had things from my book I think been taken. I've seen news stories that parallel things in my Forgotten Exodus, but you won't get credited. And a scientist said to me, look, it's quite possible that academics are stealing your work and that they will not credit you till the day they die, because they will not say that they had to borrow from a fringe researcher. They will just claim that they discovered it. And it may well be that Anthony Peake's work has the same problem, that some of these people will take the ideas from him, but he won't get the credit. But his work is exceptional. And I really recommend anyone who's interested in paranormal, consciousness, psychics, anything like that, really anyone, just to have a look at it, because he's finding some real fundamental answers to the human condition, right, and to perhaps how the nature of reality works.
Yeah, I actually watched him on YouTube last week because I was researching some of the people I was going to have on the show to try to figure out what I wanted to ask them. And yeah, his questions are profound. His research is profound. And that's why I was telling you earlier that I sometimes do feel like that things are getting better, that research is coming together, that people want to know more, and we are getting somewhere with this. If we can just stop the fighting and understand the human condition and cause and effect, and don't cause so much chaos with our beliefs and our emotional investments.
Yeah, I'm not letting that run out of control. So, hopefully that will be something that makes a change, and that his work will make a change in that sphere, and I hope mine will make a change in those spheres that I'm tackling. And of course, his work overlaps. In fact, I know Anthony's got a book coming out on alien intelligences, which will delve into this subject. So both of us, have overlapping interests and overlapping work. So it'd be kind of interesting to see where it pans out. I'd love at some point to be able to do something collaborative with him, or be at a conference where we both speak, because definitely I think there's overlaps, and we do have some exchanges. We've talked a couple of times, and so they're definitely interesting work to watch. So if people want to check his stuff out, so that gives an idea of sort of what I like, what I'm into, what I'm doing next. So it's so like you're one of the few people that I've got to watch develop. Some people got to speak to Jim Mars. I never got the chance to, or I got to speak to, we were talking about John Anthony West earlier. I caught him on the end, but you're different to me. I've got an emotional investment with you, just to be honest with everybody, because you're different to me. I've watched you develop as this is coming along, and people are starting to dive more and more into your research. You're on Coast, and then I was like, oh yeah, he's getting on big radio shows now, right? Next is TV. When's the TV going to happen? And yes, we got. I have got upcoming appearances on Ancient Aliens. Yep. I can't give any specific details of the episodes, because obviously the NDAs that they have with people on them. But all I can say is that I will be featuring as one of those talking heads soon. So they'll see that in this season. So that's happening. It also, you never know. Things may come out of that. I'd like to do a show, of course, which is hyper focused on my own research, but there's stepping stones in there to that. But it'd be nice to do something like a documentary or a series, which tackles either my exogenesis book or tackles the Forgotten Exodus book. I mean, that would be like a dream come true, because those really need to be visually presented to people, and they lend themselves to that, to be able to have, like when we watch Nat Geo or something tackle human origins, but to have that same kind of quality production, but with this new story, so that people can really see, oh God, this makes sense. This I can engage with.
People in the chat are going nuts. They're like, oh man, I can hear the crickets now. Are they frying your brain? Right. So it's, what is this? Is this the same guy? Did you have a problem in an airport in Thailand? Did I miss something? Someone's asking about
that. I had a problem in Turkey. I had a very serious problem in Turkey. Look, I've had a couple of incidents at airports, very strange ones. Look, I had one when I was flying back from Egypt. I was flying back to London. And usually you get off the plane, you walk along, eventually you get to passport control. And then, if your problem's going to happen, normally your problems start there, right? Yeah. I've had a couple of instances where the problem started long before that. The one coming back to London from Egypt, I got off the plane, and within a few seconds, that crowd of people come out the tunnel, and they're heading off up the corridor, and there was these two guys there, and they just straight away called me over, two plainclothes. I don't even know what division they were, some kind of special police. They asked me why I'd been in Egypt, what I was doing there, what my purposes were, what my job is, what do I do, who am I, did I buy there, what am I doing there, started getting grilled. This is literally coming out of the tunnel connecting the plane to the thing. So they were waiting for me, and I have no idea really what division of law enforcement, who these people were, but they had badges and they were quite clearly waiting for me, right? And then elsewhere in Turkey, I had a problem. I got to the first desk after getting off the plane from Amsterdam. I was connecting through Turkey to go on to Georgia. This is when I was doing the Science Channel show about the giants. Two plainclothes police there. They took my passport. They were laughing. They were talking to each other, laughing, looking at my passport. I thought, that's a bad start when the police start laughing for no reason.
What do they think? Right? You're like, catch me if you can, some kind of spy guy or something?
Well, that one got really weird, because then when I actually got through to the area, your waiting room to go on the plane, and I was already thinking, like, these people put something in my bag, or, what the hell's going on here? I mean, I know that there's a lot of corrupt cops in the world. So I was very nervous, like we know about Midnight Express and stuff. Like, I don't plan to be in some Turkish jail for the rest of my life for no reason, But they came back. And they started saying, no, you come with us, drugs, you come with us, come down this tunnel with us. I'm like thinking, I don't think there's a good end for me down that tunnel.
No.
Yeah, it's like everyone's getting on the plane. They waited till the people were getting on the plane, and then they came back and said I had to come with them about drugs. And I'm thinking, I've got no drugs. Like, what's... So look, I've already been checked. I've been checked in Ecuador. Oh, Ecuador, drugs. And I went, but I've flown through Amsterdam, and they checked me. Oh, Amsterdam, drugs. And I was like, oh God, this is not going well. And then you come with us. And what I did is, and a lot of people wouldn't do this, because a lot of people just accept authority, and they would go down the tunnel and they would reap the consequences of that. I basically just tipped my bag out in the waiting room and just loudly was saying, look, I've got no drugs on me. I've been checked. I made sure everybody was watching me, right? I made sure everybody in that room watching me. Make sure this wasn't going to be quietly me taking down the corridor and whatever happened to me. So
you wanted the public to see the martyr that was about to happen.
I know this isn't legit. And I can feel it in every bit of my bones that this is not legit, and these are corrupt cops, right? And so, of course, they don't want loads of attention on something that they're doing that's illegal, or whatever it is that they're doing. So then they said, just put the things back in the bag. Right, real, as you know, if it's real law enforcement activity, they don't do that. They say, just put the things in the bag, come down the corridor, right?
I'm only laughing because you're here safely, by the way. I'm not trying to make light of the situation.
No, horrible at the time. I mean, because I knew this was a really serious situation, and that my plane was going to fly off, and I was going to be stuck in Turkey with two bent cops, right? So then, they actually said, go, you go, then you go, and they were just smiling creepily down the corridor as I got onto the plane, and the guy from the plane said, like, you all right? And so he's like, I said, like, is that normal? He's like, no, I've never seen that happen to anyone else.
I told you this guy's clever, y'all. He is. What do you think's down there? Just curious. What do you think's down in that tunnel?
I was wondering, do they put the drugs in my bag, or do they just open a bag, say, here's the drugs that you had on you, now you pay us, or you go to jail forever? It's got to be something like that.
maybe they need some drugs and they're just trying to get some. You know,
that you've come from Ecuador and Amsterdam. Maybe you've got some drugs on you that they want. Or so. I don't know, but definitely real cops don't just say, "Now go down the corridor." Just go. You know, they take you down the corridor, right, and they check you. Yeah,
that was the only time that happened, right? Right.
That one, yeah. The people in the airport said that they'd never seen it happen to anyone else like that. So make of that what you will. I seem to have very strange encounters with strange plainclothes police and stuff in airports and things. So I don't know. Is someone watching me? Is it some secret agency? You know, is it just bad luck? Is it the universe messing with me? I don't know. But yeah, it makes me nervous to travel at times.
I don't doubt it. Some people are saying that you need to do tours. I'd love to follow you around with a camera and see what happens. It sounds fascinating. We learn a whole bunch of stuff and have some experiences, that's for sure.
I'm put off, though, going to Göbekli Tepe now in case those two cops are waiting for me in the airport.
That's terrible, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but so, I mean, I don't know if anyone had any quick questions or anything. I can try to answer if you like, but I don't know how much time we've got.
I don't know. I've got ADD. There's a whole bunch of chatting going on. I don't see any I'm a one-man guy. That's why I like phones, but I'm looking. No, they're all just laughing at me. Oh. Hold on, let's see. Nope. No.
That's fine.
Pretty much a lot of laughing because that's my fault, brother. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully that kind of gives people an overview of where it's going, but also what I would like to see happen and what my concerns are in the field. But yeah, you know, I do think there's more to come out of the ancient aliens topic. Look, I mean, I've by no means found everything that's happened. Even since writing the book, you know, I've stumbled on a couple of other people's work where they've identified anomalies in the human genome, which also relate to this modification event, you know, things that I hadn't seen. And I've got no doubt that, you know, if we had some geneticists and evolutionary biologists and stuff that were willing to really take this seriously, if they're not already quietly, you know, in a lab somewhere doing this. But, you know, if we could have some of these people come on board and look and start off with the premise that there is some evidence of modification, can we find more? I bet that we would quickly find that there is, you know, additional information there. And I think we're going to find, that there's absolutely solid evidence that, you know, this is an engineering event. And also it's going to teach us about CRISPR. And, you know, we're just at the edges of this revolution, a genetic revolution. If we can look at the fingerprints of the handiwork of genetic engineers that are, say, 1 million years ahead of us, right, then we know which way to go. You know, it's going to help inform us what we can do, what we can't do, what we need to understand. I mean, for example, whereas now we may be modifying genes, right, and we're doing a lot with that and splicing genes and stuff, cutting genes. But what we see in some of these anomalies is that the focus was more on modifying code which deals with genetic expression and what they call switches, gene switches, gene regulation switches, which basically can turn on or off gene function or decrease or emphasize the function of a gene. So you can say if you've got a gene for the shape of the head, right, that you can go in there and just change that bit of code for expression of that gene and change the shape of the head or the size, right? So you can almost take a human, right, and through this process turn it into something like a grey alien, right, or something like that, or a reptilian or whatever. If you really understand these switches, you can get these genes to express in different ways or turn them on or off. And so you start to realize you don't need to splice in loads of genes. You don't need loads of new genes. This idea that hybrids, alien hybrids, that we're like, you know, half alien, half human with this alien DNA, you start to realize that that actually is a misnomer, and it's really unlikely that we have any large amount of foreign material. That what these engineers would have done, and what they seem to have done, is just they've gone into the code and almost rewritten us at the code level.
Are you watching the chat room, by the way? Just curious.
No, I'm not. Sorry.
Because right before you started talking about that, someone asked if you could come back and talk about that, and then you immediately started talking about it.
There you go. Picking up on the extrasensory network.
Yeah,
so
right.
That's what I see as having happened. I can see that not only they spliced 2 chromosomes end-to-end fusion on chromosome 2. We also have, we do have genes that appear. There's a gene that appears out of non-coding DNA, what's called junk DNA once, and it appears fully formed. Scientists are like, oh, and it just appears out of nowhere, right? And there's other ones where there's fragments of genes, and they actually describe it like it looks like it's been taken out, cut, snipped, a piece of it replicated, and then the duplicate added in, right? And we know that's what we're doing with CRISPR and stuff, right? And then on top of that, you have, like I say, all of these others, like 300 or so human accelerated regions where these pieces of genetic switches have been changed, right? So when you combine that, you think, well, so you've got the switches have been modified, you've got chromosomes spliced together, you've got genes appearing out of nowhere, you've got genes that have been cut and copied and put back in. And at what point do you say, well, this is a glaring anomaly of some kind of event where, things have gone completely derailed from natural evolution? Like, how could that happen? The only thing I know that can do that is intelligence, right? And if there was no human intelligence around at the time, who else is capable of this? So it has to be something extraterrestrial or interdimensional that is able to manifest here, and that something has come down and done this to us. And again, if you start viewing DNA as a code, as a true, like a computer code, that if you fully understand it, you can go in and just start clickety-click, changing the code, rewriting them, changing the genome, creating a new organism, being, done, right? Then you start to see that the level of intelligence we're dealing with is profound, absolutely profound, godlike.
You guys check out the website, brucefenton.info. That's the website you want to go check out. Surely we'll have him back, but this time there will be no wood creatures here. That I can assure you. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Don't forget the show's produced by the Fringe FM. Don't copy it. Music was by Chronox, without permission anyways. And Bundy. Up next is Ryan Gable. Thanks, Pacho, Don, Dennis. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.
Drink, another drink. Plenty in the cellar when it's gone. Drink, the glasses clink, making tinkling music till the dawn is breaking. Clang, clang, who cares a dang? What's the difference when you're on a spree? Over the teeth behind the gums, look out, stomach, here she comes.